The golden light of dawn crept across the marble floors of Harrison Montgomery's mansion, illuminating the cold steel bars of the cage where his 7-year-old son whimpered quietly, his small hands trembling as they clutched an empty bowl. Outside the window, in the private zoo that Harrison had built to flaunt his wealth, Ellie the elephant stood motionless, her intelligent eyes fixed on the crying child, the same child who had sneaked her peanuts and whispered stories when no one was watching. As Harrison strode into the room, preparing to deliver another lecture on discipline and strength to his disappointing heir, he had no idea that the bond between the gentle giant and his son would shatter not just the cage, but the prison he had built around his own heart. What soul-crushing tragedy turned a loving father into such a monster? And how could the wisdom of an elephant restore what humanity had lost? Like and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of redemption, and share your thoughts in the comments about times when unexpected connections changed everything in your life. Oliver Montgomery had always been small for his age. At 7 years old, he possessed a gentleness that his father regarded as weakness, a fatal flaw in the Montgomery bloodline that Harrison was determined to purge. But in the company of Ellie, Oliver felt nothing like the disappointment his father claimed him to be. Their friendship had begun 4 months ago, on his birthday, while the elaborate party his father had organized bustled with business associates and their children, none of whom Oliver knew. He had slipped away to explore the newly completed private zoo. Your father spared no expense, the zookeeper, Dr. Chen, had told him when he found Oliver staring wide-eyed at the elephant enclosure. Ellie came all the way from a rescue center in Thailand. Oliver had gazed up at the massive creature, whose wise eyes seemed to hold entire universes. "Is she sad?" he'd asked. Dr. Chen had smiled kindly. "She's adjusting. Perhaps she could use a friend." That invitation was all Oliver needed. When no one was watching, he would sneak from the mansion with pockets full of peanuts and books tucked under his arm. The elephant would trumpet softly upon seeing him, a sound he came to recognize as his name in Ellie's language. "Did you know elephants can feel sadness?" Oliver whispered to Ellie one afternoon, reading from a book he'd found in his father's vast library. "They even mourn their dead, just like people." Ellie's trunk had reached through the bars, gently, ruffling his hair as if to say she understood more than he knew. It was during one of these secret reading sessions that Maria, the housekeeper who had practically raised Oliver since his mother's death, discovered their friendship. "Madre de Dios," she had exclaimed, nearly dropping the laundry basket she carried. "Oliver, get back from those bars this instant." "She wouldn't hurt me," Oliver had protested, his hand resting on Ellie's trunk. "She's my friend." Maria's stern expression had softened as she watched the gentle interaction between boy and beast. "Your father would not approve of this. ... Friendship." "Please don't tell him," Oliver had begged, his voice breaking. "He already thinks I'm too soft. If he knew I came here to read to Ellie." Maria had sighed, setting down her basket and approaching cautiously. "Your father, he was not always as he is now. There was a time when he too had a softness in him, before Mum died." Oliver had asked, speaking the question that always hung between them. Unaddressed, Maria had nodded, sadness etching deeper lines around her eyes. "Come, Nino. We will keep your secret, but you must be careful." After that, Maria would sometimes cover for his absences, and occasionally even brought extra fruit for Ellie. These stolen moments became Oliver's sanctuary from his father's increasing disappointment and criticism. "You're the only one who listens," Oliver confided to Ellie one evening, as the setting sun cast long shadows across the enclosure. "Dad just sees all the ways I'm wrong." Ellie had reached her trunk out to him, and Oliver pressed his forehead against its wrinkled surface, closing his eyes. In that moment of connection, he felt understood in a way that no human except perhaps Maria had made him feel since his mother's death. "I dreamed about my mum last night," he whispered to Ellie. "I don't even remember her, but in my dream, she was singing to me. Dad never talks about her." The elephant made a low rumbling sound that vibrated through Oliver's small body. "Maybe that's why he's getting worse," Oliver continued, wiping away tears. "He threw away my drawing yesterday. Said art was for people who couldn't succeed at anything important. What Oliver couldn't have known then was that Ellie understood loss far better than he realized. She had lost her own mother to poachers, had been separated from her herd, and had endured months of trauma before being rescued and eventually sold to Harrison Montgomery's private collection. Perhaps that shared grief was the invisible thread, connecting them, a boy without a mother and an elephant far from home, both trapped in gilded cages of Harrison Montgomery's making, finding in each other the companionship they so desperately needed. Harrison Montgomery stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his study, a crystal tumbler of whiskey catching the last crimson rays of sunset. Below, landscapers were packing up their equipment after another day of maintaining the immaculate grounds of the Montgomery estate. In the reflection of the glass, he could see the portrait that hung on the opposite wall. Eleanor Montgomery's gentle smile haunted him from its ornate frame, a reminder of everything he had lost 7 years ago. "You're doing it again," came a voice from the doorway. Harrison didn't turn. "Doing what?" Bradley Wells, his business partner of 15 years, entered and helped himself to the whiskey decanter. "Torturing yourself, standing here like some gothic hero, drinking and staring at her picture." "I wasn't staring at her picture," Harrison replied, though they both knew it was a lie. "The board meeting went well today," Bradley said, changing the subject. "The Westlake development is going to make us a fortune." Harrison nodded absently, taking another sip of his drink. Eleanor would have hated it. Tearing down those old neighborhoods for luxury condos. Bradley sighed. "And this is why I bring business news to your office, and not your personal quarters. She's been gone 7 years, Harrison. You have a son to think about." At the mention of Oliver, Harrison's jaw tightened. "I am thinking about him. Everything I do is to secure his future." "I meant actually spending time with him. Being a father, not just a provider." Harrison turned from the window, his eyes cold. "My father raised me to understand that the world doesn't reward weakness. Oliver needs to learn that lesson." "Your father," Bradley said carefully, "was a ruthless bastard who drove your mother to an early grave and nearly did the same to you. And yet," Harrison replied, "look at what I've built. Would I have achieved any of this if he had coddled me?" Bradley didn't answer, instead swirling the amber liquid in his glass. He had been there through it all: Harrison's brutal upbringing under steel magnate William Montgomery, his rebellion in college, his whirlwind romance with Eleanor, and the devastating day when childbirth complications had taken her life. "The boy is sensitive," Harrison continued. "Like Eleanor. I need to toughen him up before the world does it for him. He's 7, Harrison. I was 7 when my father first locked me in the cellar for crying during a business dinner. I learned quickly." Bradley winced. "And you turned out so well adjusted." Harrison ignored the sarcasm. "I received a call from his teacher today. He was found crying in the bathroom again. Some boy took his book, and instead of standing up for himself, he hid and wept. That's normal kid stuff, Harrison. Not for a Montgomery." Harrison finished his drink and set the glass down with finality. "My father understood that the world devours the weak. I hated him for his methods, but I cannot deny their effectiveness." Bradley studied his friend's face, the handsome features now hardened by grief and bitterness. "Eleanor wouldn't want this for him, or for you." "Eleanor isn't here," Harrison snapped. "She left me alone with a boy who looks exactly like her, who has her same damned softness. And I am doing the best I can to prepare him for reality." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken grief. "I have a meeting," Harrison finally said, straightening his already perfect tie. "Tell Maria to send Oliver to my study when I return. No dinner for him tonight. He needs to understand consequences." After Harrison left, Bradley remained in the study, looking up at Eleanor's portrait. "I'm trying, Ellie," he murmured to the painting, "but he's getting worse." In the kitchen, Maria was helping Oliver with his homework when Bradley entered. "Where is the little man?" Bradley asked, forcing cheer into his voice. "Mr. Bradley." Oliver looked up, his face brightening momentarily before falling again. "Did my dad say if I can have dinner tonight?" The question made Bradley's stomach turn. "Your father had to step out for a meeting." Maria's eyes met Bradley's over Oliver's head, a silent question passing between them. He said, ... Bradley hesitated, hating himself for what he was about to relay. He said no dinner tonight, and that you're to wait in his study when he returns. Oliver's small shoulders slumped, but he nodded with a resignation no child should possess. I understand, mi niño. At least let me make you some. Maria vegan? No, Oliver interrupted, gathering his books. Last time you gave me food when Dad said not to. He almost fired you. I'm not very hungry anyway. The lie was transparent. The boy was thin enough already, but Bradley didn't contradict him. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a chocolate bar. This isn't dinner, he said with a conspiratorial wink. This is brain food. For finishing your homework. Oliver hesitated, then took the chocolate with a grateful smile that broke Bradley's heart. After the boy left to put away his schoolwork, Maria turned to Bradley, her normally kind eyes flashing with anger. This cannot continue, Mr. Wells. The boy is fading away before our eyes. I know, Bradley admitted, but Harrison is. He is trapped in his grief, in his own father's shadow. That is no excuse, Maria said firmly. My husband died when our children were small. Did I punish them for his absence? Did I starve them for reminding me of him? Bradley had no answer for that. I'll talk to him again. Talk is cheap, Maria replied, turning back to her cooking. That boy needs help. And so does Mr. Montgomery, though he would never admit it. Neither of them could have predicted how that help would arrive, or that it would come not from Bradley's reasoned arguments or Maria's compassionate interventions, but from the most unexpected ally of Alan Elephant, who understood the language of loss better than any of them. The crystal chandelier cast prisms of light across the formal dining room, as Harrison Montgomery hosted a delegation of potential investors. Oliver sat rigidly in his chair, his feet barely reaching the floor, trying desperately to remember all the rules his father had drilled into him. Back straight, napkin on lap, outside fork first, no elbows on the table, speak only when spoken to. Your son is remarkably well behaved, Montgomery, remarked Victor Zhao, the Chinese investor whose support was crucial for Harrison's newest development project. My grandson is his age and can't sit still for 5 minutes. Harrison nodded curtly. Discipline is a cornerstone of success, Zhao. It's never too early to learn that. Oliver stared at his plate, relieved to have a small portion of food after yesterday's punishment. His stomach growled quietly, and he pressed his hand against it, hoping no one had heard. And what do you want to be when you grow up, young man? Asked Mrs. Zhao, smiling kindly at Oliver. Oliver hesitated, glancing at his father. The correct answer was a businessman like my father, but something made him speak the truth instead. I'd like to work with animals, ma'am, especially elephants. A flash of annoyance crossed Harrison's face. Oliver is still exploring options. He'll be attending Westmont Academy next year, where they have an excellent business track. Animals are a noble interest, Mr. Zhao said, seemingly oblivious to the tension. My company has funded several conservation efforts in Southeast Asia. Oliver brightened. Really? Did you know elephants can recognize themselves in mirrors? That means they have self-awareness, just like humans, and Harrison cleared his throat. I'm sure Mr. Zhao doesn't want a zoology lesson during dinner, Oliver. But Mr. Zhao waved his hand. On the contrary, I find it fascinating. Please, continue. Encouraged, Oliver began sharing facts about elephant intelligence and social structures, facts he'd learned during his secret reading sessions with Ellie. For a moment, his nervousness faded, replaced by genuine enthusiasm. The momentary happiness shattered when Oliver's elbow bumped his water glass, sending it toppling. The crystal shattered on the hardwood floor, water splashing onto Mrs. Zhao's designer dress. I'm so sorry, Oliver gasped, horrified. It's just water, dear, Mrs. Zhao said kindly, dabbing at her dress with a napkin. But Harrison's face had transformed, his eyes glacial. Excuse my son, he said, his voice dangerously controlled. Oliver, go to your room immediately. But Dad, I didn't mean now. Oliver slipped from his chair, head bowed in shame, and hurried from the dining room. Behind him, he He heard his father smoothly redirecting the conversation to the investment opportunity, as if his son had never been there at all. In his bedroom, Oliver curled on his bed, tears streaming silently down his face. He'd ruined everything. Again, his father would be furious, more than furious. He wasn't wrong. 2 hours later, when the dinner party had concluded, Harrison stormed into Oliver's room. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he demanded, his voice low but seething with rage. "Shao was considering a $50 million investment. Your clumsiness and inappropriate chatter may have cost us everything." "I'm sorry," Oliver whispered. "It was an accident." "Accidents are the result of carelessness," Harrison snapped. "And your obsession with those animals is becoming a problem. Where are you getting these ideas, these facts?" Oliver froze, afraid to reveal his secret visits to Ellie. "Nowhere. Just ... books." Harrison's eyes narrowed. Books that should be focused on subjects that matter, mathematics, business, not elephant trivia. He paced the room, his anger seeming to grow rather than diminish. Oliver had seen this before his father, working himself into a state where no apology would suffice. "I've been too lenient," Harrison finally said. "My father would never have tolerated such behavior. Perhaps his methods had merit after all." A chill ran through Oliver at these words. His father rarely spoke of his grandfather, but when he did, it was always with a mixture of resentment and reluctant respect. "Dad, please, no more chances," Harrison interrupted. "You need to learn consequences. Real ones. Come with me." He gripped Oliver's arm, pulling him from the bed and down the hallway to a room Oliver had never entered before. It was sparsely furnished, with only a desk and chairand in the corner. A large metal cage, the kind used for training large dogs. Oliver's eyes widened. "What's that for?" "You," Harrison said coldly. "My father believed isolation and deprivation built character. I've resisted his techniques, but clearly my softer approach has failed. You're going to put me in a cage." Oliver's voice shook with disbelief. "Until you learn discipline. No food until you demonstrate you understand your mistakes. But no arguments." In trembling tears streaming down his face, Oliver crawled into the cage. The metal was cold against his pajama-clad body, the space barely large enough for him to lie down. Harrison closed the door with a decisive click, securing it with a padlock. "I'll return in the morning. Use this time to reflect on your behavior." After his father left, Oliver curled into a ball, sobs racking his small frame. Through the window, he could see a slice of night sky and, in the distance, the shadowy outline of the elephant enclosure. "Ellie," he whispered, as if the elephant could somehow hear him across the distance. "I need you." Unknown to Oliver, at that very moment, Ellie had become restless in her enclosure, pacing back and forth, her ears flicking as if listening for something only she could hear. Dr. Chen frowned as he checked the log entries for Ellie's behavior over the past 24 hours. The normally placid elephant had been exhibiting unusual restlessness since yesterday evening, pacing her enclosure, refusing food, and making low rumbling sounds that seemed directed toward the main house. "Something's bothering her," he murmured, making another note on his tablet. As if in response, Ellie trumpeted loudly, startling the small group of exotic birds in a nearby aviary. The sound wasn't her usual gentle greeting, but something more. Urgent, almost distressed, Dr. Chen approached the enclosure cautiously. After working with elephants for 20 years, he had developed a deep respect for their intelligence and emotional complexity. Ellie, in particular, showed remarkable awareness of her surroundings and the people in them. "What is it, girl?" he asked, keeping a safe distance from the bars. "What's got you so worked up?" Ellie paced to the far side of her enclosure, the side facing the mansion, and raised her trunk, making another low rumbling sound. Her ears were fully extended, a sign of alertness or agitation. Dr. Chen followed her gaze toward the house, puzzled. In the 6 months since Harrison Montgomery had purchased Ellie from the rescue center in Thailand, she had shown little interest in the main residence. Her attachment to young Oliver was the exception, a relationship that warmed Dr. Chen's heart. despite his misgivings about private ownership of such magnificent creatures. "Are you missing your little friend?" he asked softly. Ellie's trunk reached toward the house again, and she made a sound that, to Dr. Chun's experienced ear, sounded disturbingly like distress. Making a decision, he pulled out his phone and dialed. "The main house," Maria answered. "Buenos dias, Dr. Chun. Is something wrong with the animals?" "Good morning, Maria. Possibly. Ellie is behaving oddly, seems agitated, and keeps focusing on the house. I was wondering if Oliver might come visit her. Sometimes that calms her down." There was a pause, and when Maria spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. "I'm afraid Oliver is indisposed this morning. Mr. Montgomery has pant. He is disciplining the boy." Something in her tone made Dr. Chun's skin prickle. "Is everything all right, Maria?" Another pause. "I should not say more. I'm sorry." The line went dead, leaving Dr. Chen staring at his phone with growing concern. In his 6 months working at the Montgomery estate, he had seen enough to form opinions about Harrison Montgomery's parenting, none of them positive. The man's coldness toward his son was palpable, but Dr. Chen had never witnessed anything that crossed the line into actual abuse. Until now, perhaps. He looked back at Ellie, who was still focused intently on the house, and wondered if somehow, impossibly, she sensed something wrong with the boy she had bonded with. It wouldn't be the first time he had witnessed such awareness in elephants. During his years at a sanctuary in Kenya, he had seen matriarchs anticipate threats to their herds, sense illness in calves before symptoms appeared, and even show grief for fallen humans they had known. Elephants possessed emotional intelligence that science was only beginning to understand, but sensing a child in distress from hundreds of yards away, through walls, that seemed far-fetched even for Ellie, and yet... His musings were interrupted by the sound of tires on gravel. A sleek black Tesla pulled up to the staff parking area, and a young man emerged, waving enthusiastically at Dr. Chen. "Uncle, surprise." The young man called, jogging over to the elephant enclosure. Dr. Chen's worried expression melted into a smile as he recognized his nephew. "Rog, what are you doing here? I thought your flight wasn't until tomorrow." Raj Patel, a lanky 22-year-old with an easy smile and bright eyes, shrugged. "I switched to an earlier flight. Thought I'd surprise you." The two embraced, Dr. Chen patting his nephew's back warmly. Raj was his sister's son, recently graduated from Cornell with a degree in veterinary science and wildlife conservation. He had spent the last 4 years studying elephants, in particular, inspired by his uncle's work. "Perfect timing," Dr. Chen said. "I could use a second opinion. Ellie here has been acting strangely since last night." Rog approached the enclosure, immediately adopting the respectful, careful demeanor of someone who understood these animals weren't simply attractions, but intelligent beings deserving of dignity. "Hello, beautiful," he said softly to Ellie. The elephant turned her attention briefly to Rog, her trunk extending toward him in a cursory investigation before returning to her vigilant watch of the mansion. "How long has she been focused on the house like that?" Rog asked. "Since last night." She was refusing food, pacing, vocalizing more than usual. Rog observed the elephant's behavior with a trained eye. Her body language suggests concern, maybe even distress. "Is there something happening at the house that might be upsetting her?" Dr. Chen hesitated, unsure how much to share. "She's formed a bond with the owner's young son. He visits her regularly, reads to her, brings her treats. But I called the house, and apparently he's being disciplined today." Roger's eyebrows rose. "Disciplined how?" "I don't know." But the housekeeper sounded ... concerned. Before they could discuss it further, Ellie suddenly went still, her entire massive body tensing. Both men froze, recognizing the change in her demeanor. Instantly then, without warning, she charged the fence of her enclosure, not the side facing the house, but the gate that led to the service road connecting the zoo area to the main grounds. "Ellie, no," Dr. Chen shouted, but the elephant paid no attention. With a strength born of desperation, Ellie slammed her massive head against the gate. The metal groaned but held. Undeterred, she backed up and charged again, trumpeting loudly. "Uncle, what's happening?" Rog asked, alarmed. "I don't know," Dr. Chen replied, already reaching for his tranquilizer kit. "But we need to stop her before she hurts herself or breaks through." But it was too late. On the third charge, something in the gate mechanism snapped. The heavy metal door swung open, and before either man could react, Ellie was through, moving with surprising speed toward the main house. "Call security," Dr. Chen yelled to a groundskeeper who had appeared, drawn by the commotion. "Tell them Ellie is loose and headed for the mansion." As alarms began to sound across the estate, Ellie continued her determined path toward the Montgomery home, her focus unwavering, guided by some instinct that transcended human understanding. She was going to find Oliver. Rog sprinted after Ellie, ignoring his uncle's shouts to stay back. For years, studying elephant behavior had taught him that Ellie wasn't displaying aggression. This was something else entirely. The determined set of her head, the purposeful stride, the focused attention forward rather than the agitated swinging typical of a charging elephant. She was on a mission. The mansion loomed ahead, a sprawling testament to wealth and privilege. Security personnel were emerging from various points on the grounds, their walkie-talkies crackling with alarmed voices. "Stop the elephant. Trank it if you have to," one guard shouted. "Don't shoot," Rog called out. "She's not aggressive." But no one was listening to him. A guard raised a tranquilizer gun, taking aim at Ellie's flank. Without thinking, Rog darted forward, placing himself between Ellie and the guard. "Lower your weapon. You'll only agitate her more." The guard hesitated, and in that moment, Ellie veered suddenly to the right, moving toward a side wing of the mansion. Rog followed, keeping pace with the elephant while maintaining a safe distance. Ellie stopped abruptly at a large window, pressing her massive head close to the glass. Rog slowed, watching in fascination as the elephant's trunk explored the window's edge, as if searching for a way in. "What are you looking for, girl?" he murmured. Stepping closer, Rog peered through the window and felt his blood turn cold. Inside the room, behind the bars of a metal cage barely large enough to contain him, sat a small boy with tear-streaked cheeks. The child was huddled in a corner of the cage, hugging his knees to his chest, his face a mask of misery and fear. "Holy shit," Rog breathed, horrified. The boy looked up, his eyes widening as he spotted Ellie at the window. Despite his obvious distress, a smile broke across his face. "Ellie," the word was muffled by the glass, but the joy in it was unmistakable. The elephant trumpeted softly in response, her trunk pressing against the window, as if trying to reach the caged child. The surreal tableau was shattered by the arrival of more security guards, followed by Dr. Chen. "Rog, get away from there," his uncle called. "Uncle, there's a kid in there in a cage." Rog pointed at the window. Dr. Chen's face paled as he took in the scene. "That's Oliver, Mr. Montgomery's son. He's locked in a fucking cage." Roger's voice rose with indignation. "Like an animal." Before Dr. Chen could respond, the door to the room burst open, and Harrison Montgomery stormed in, followed by a woman Rog assumed was a housekeeper or nanny. Through the window, they could see Montgomery's face contort with rage as he noticed the elephant and the gathering crowd outside. He strode to the window and yanked down a blind, cutting off their view of Oliver. "Poor favor, Mr. Montgomery," the woman was saying as the blind descended. "The boy has been punished enough." The rest was cut off as the blind sealed the room from outside eyes. "We have to do something," Rog said, turning to his uncle. "That's child abuse." Dr. Chen looked torn, his professional demeanor at war with his obvious concern. "Rog, this is a complicated situation. Mr. Montgomery is a powerful man, and I don't care how powerful he is," Rog interrupted. "No one has the right to cage a child like that." A security guard approached them, his hand resting meaningfully on his tranquilizer gun. "Dr. Chen, Mr. Montgomery wants the elephant returned to its enclosure immediately, and he wants all staff to disperse now." Dr. Chen nodded reluctantly. "Of course, Rog, help me with Ellie." But Ellie had no intention of leaving. She remained fixed at the window, making low rumbling sounds that Rog recognized as signs of distress. When Dr. Chen attempted to guide her away, she shifted her massive body, effectively blocking him from approaching further. "She won't leave him," Rog said softly. "She has to," the guard insisted. "Mr. Montgomery is on the phone with animal control. If you can't control that beast, they'll handle it their way." The threat hung in the air, clear and ominous. Reluctantly, Dr. Chen pulled out a small container of treats, specially formulated for Ellie, fruits and vegetables she particularly enjoyed. "Ellie, come now," he called, shaking the container. "Let's go home." For a moment, it seemed the elephant might respond to the familiar routine. She turned her head slightly, her trunk waving in the direction of the treats. Then her gaze returned to the window, and she trumpeted once, decisively, before settling more firmly in place. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Chen murmured, more to himself than to the others. "The bond between them must be even stronger than I realized." The standoff continued for several tense minutes. More security personnel arrived, forming a perimeter around the elephant and the window. From inside the house came the sound of raised voices. Harrison Montgomery was evidently displeased with the situation. Then the side door opened, and Montgomery himself emerged, his face a thundercloud of fury. "Dr. Chen," he said coldly, "if you cannot remove that animal from my property immediately, you are fired, and I will personally ensure you never work with elephants again." Rog stepped forward, unable to contain himself any longer. "Maybe the elephant wouldn't be upset if you weren't keeping your son in a cage like some Victorian monster." Montgomery's eyes snapped to Rog, narrowing dangerously. "And who the hell are you?" "Rog Patel, Dr. Chen's nephew, and I'm calling Child Protective Services right now." He pulled out his phone, but before he could dial, a security guard grabbed his arm, twisting until the phone clattered to the ground. "Hey," Rog protested, struggling against the guard's grip. "Remove him from the premises," Montgomery ordered, "and confiscate that phone." Two guards took hold of Rog, beginning to drag him away despite his protests. Dr. Chen stepped forward, alarmed. "Mr. Montgomery, please, he's just concerned for the boy." "Your concern is the animals, Dr. Chen, not my parenting methods." As Rog was pulled away, he locked eyes with Ellie, who watched the scene with what he could have sworn was understanding. He thought of the small boy behind the blind, caged and alone, except for an elephant who somehow sensed his distress. "I'll come back," he promised, silently, not to Ellie, but to Oliver. "I'll find a way to help you." Behind him, he heard Montgomery issuing more threats and ultimatums, but Roger's mind was already racing ahead, formulating a plan. Whatever it took, he would not leave that child to suffer alone. Rog hadn't gone far. Despite being escorted off the property, he had circled back, finding a secluded spot in the extensive gardens where he could observe the mansion without being seen. His phone was gone, confiscated by Montgomery's security, but his determination remained unshaken. As dusk settled over the estate, he watched Dr. Chen and the animal handlers finally coax Ellie back to her enclosure. The elephant went reluctantly, constantly looking back toward the window where Oliver remained. Imprisoned, security guards patrolled the grounds more frequently now, their flashlights cutting through the growing darkness. Rog knew he needed to get back inside, to find some evidence of Montgomery's abuse that could help the boy. But how? The answer came, in the form of a small side door opening, spilling yellow light onto the garden path. Maria emerged, carrying a bag of trash to an outdoor bin. After depositing it, she paused, looking around cautiously before pulling something from her apron. "Paquita, cigarette and lighter." "Didn't know you smoked," Rog said quietly. Stepping from his hiding place, Maria startled, nearly dropping the cigarette. "Dios mío, you scared me." She peered at him in the dim light. "You're Dr. Chen's nephew, the one who tried to help." Rog nodded. "I need to get back inside. That boy needs help." Maria's expression darkened. "Oliver, yes, he does." She glanced back at the house nervously. "But Mr. Montgomery is a powerful man. He has friends in the police, in politics. I have tried to protect the boy as much as I can, but what?" She shook her head. It gets worse each year. Since Mrs. Montgomery died giving birth, he has changed. Like a piece of him died with her. She lit her cigarette with trembling hands. And now, this cage, ... It goes too far. Help me. Rog urged. Let me back in. I need to find something we can use. Some evidence. Maria studied him for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. The service entrance. Wait 10 minutes, then come to the kitchen door. I will let you in. She dropped her cigarette, crushing it under her shoe. But be careful. Mr. Montgomery is in his study, and security is everywhere. Thank you, Rog said earnestly. True to her word, Maria opened the kitchen door exactly 10 minutes later. She ushered Rog inside quickly, closing and locking the door behind him. The boy is still in the discipline room, she whispered. Mr. Montgomery finally allowed me to bring him water, but no food. He says Oliver must learn. Rage flared in Rog, but he tamped it down. Anger wouldn't help Oliver now. Can you take me to him? Maria shook her head. Too risky. Mr. Montgomery checks on him regularly. She hesitated, then added, but there is something else you should see. Follow me. She led Rog through the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion's service areas, carefully avoiding the main halls where they might encounter security or Montgomery himself. They climbed a narrow staircase to the 3rd floor, emerging in what appeared to be a storage area. Mrs. Montgomery's things, Maria explained, gesturing to several neatly labeled boxes. After she died, he packed everything away. Couldn't bear to look at them, but couldn't throw them away either. She moved to a particular box labeled Eleanor, Personal, and carefully opened it. Inside were journals, photographs, and letters, preserved as if in a time capsule. Mrs. Montgomery feared something like this might happen, Maria said, extracting a sealed envelope from between the pages of a journal. She wrote this letter before Oliver was born. She had ... complications during pregnancy. The doctors warned her. She handed the envelope to Rog. It was addressed simply, to be opened if I do not survive. Have you read it? Rog asked. Maria nodded. She gave me a copy. Asked me to stay, to watch over her son if the worst happened. Tears glistened in her eyes. I have tried, but it gets harder. Mr. Montgomery pushes everyone away who cares for the boy. Carefully, Rog opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was elegant, but showed signs of a shaky hand, a woman writing while ill. Perhaps, my dearest Harrison, if you are reading this, then my fears have come to pass, and I have left you alone with our child. I'm so sorry, my love. I know this isn't what we planned. But Harrison, what frightens me most isn't leaving, but what my absence might do to you. I've seen the shadows your father cast over your life, the ways his cruelty shaped you. You've fought so hard to be different, to break that cycle of pain. Please remember your promise to me that our child would never know the fear and isolation you experienced, that no matter what, you would be the father you needed when you were young. Your father believed love was weakness. You know better. You've shown me the strength it takes to love, after being taught that love is a liability. Don't let my death turn you back into William's son. Our child will need your gentleness now, more than ever. When you look at them, please, don't see only what you've lost, but what remains, the future we created together. The love that will outlive me. I know the darkness that lives inside you, the Montgomery legacy of coldness and control. Fight it, Harrison. Fight it with everything you have, for our child's sake. All my love, for all my life and beyond. Eleanor folded the letter carefully, a lump in his throat. She knew, he said softly. She was afraid this would happen. Maria nodded sadly. Mrs. Montgomery grew up in a loving home, but she understood Mr. Montgomery's wounds. His father, the old Mr. Montgomery, was a cruel man. Locked Harrison in closets, denied him food, beat him for showing any emotion. She feared history would repeat. And it has, Rog said grimly, tucking the letter into his pocket. Can I take this? It might help convince someone to intervene. Yes, but be careful. If Mr. Montgomery finds you here. Her warning was cut short by the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside. Both froze, listening intently. as the steps paused just outside the door. "Maria," called a male voice. "Are you up here?" Raj recognized the voice. Bradley Wells, Montgomery's business partner, whom he had glimpsed during the confrontation earlier. "Quick," Maria whispered urgently, gesturing to a large wardrobe in the corner. "Hide." Raj slipped into the wardrobe just as the door opened, pulling it nearly closed, but leaving a crack to peer through. From his hiding place, he watched as Bradley entered, looking troubled. "Maria, we need to talk about Oliver. This has gone too far." The night sky darkened as storm clouds gathered over the Montgomery estate. A fitting backdrop, Harrison thought, grimly as he stood at his study window, watching lightning flash in the distance. The weather service had issued warnings about the approaching system-high winds. Potential flooding, power outages. Let it come. The turmoil outside matched the storm raging within him. He poured another whiskey, his third of the evening, and took a long swallow. The elephant incident had shaken him more than he cared to admit. Not the animal itself, but the look in that young man's eyes: judgment, outrage, disgust. The same way Harrison had once looked at his own father. "I am not my father," he told himself firmly. "This is different, necessary." But Eleanor's face haunted him, her photograph staring accusingly from his desk. Would she see the difference? Or would she look at him with that same disgust? A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called, not turning from the window. Bradley stepped into the study, closing the door quietly behind him. "Harrison, we need to talk. If it's about the Zhao deal, I've smoothed things over. He called an hour ago to confirm the investment. It's not about Zhao." Bradley's reflection in the window looked uncharacteristically serious. "It's about Oliver." Harrison tensed. "My son is my business." "You've locked him in a cage, Harrison. A fucking cage." "Language," Harrison corrected automatically, turning to face his oldest friend. "And it's a temporary disciplinary measure. Nothing more severe than what my father employed." "Your father was a monster," Bradley exploded, his usually calm demeanor cracking. "You've spent your entire adult life trying not to become him. What happened to that?" Harrison's grip tightened on his glass. "I'm protecting my son." "The world is cruel, Bradley. Far crueler than I am. By traumatizing him. That's not protection. You don't understand. You don't have children." Bradley stepped closer, his voice dropping. "No, but I was there when you were a child. I saw what William did to you. The closet. The belt. The lessons that left you unable to cry even when you broke your arm in 3 places, playing hockey." Old memories stirred, unwelcome and sharp. Harrison pushed them aside. "And look what it made me. Successful, resilient, a survivor. Is that all you want for Oliver? To survive, not to be happy, not to be loved?" "Love is a luxury," Harrison replied, the words his father had drilled into him rising automatically to his lips. "Respect and discipline last longer." Bradley shook his head, disappointment evident in every line of his face. Eleanor would be heartbroken. The mention of his wife's name was like a physical blow. Harrison turned away, staring out at the approaching storm. "Leave Eleanor out of this." "I can't. She asked me to watch over both of you if anything happened to her. I promised her, Harrison, and I've failed. I've stood by while you've grown colder each year, while you've pushed that boy away for the crime of reminding you of her." "That's not true," Harrison protested, but the words rang hollow even to his own ears. "It is. You can't bear to look at him because he has her eyes, her gentleness." Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the grounds. In the distance, Harrison could see the elephant enclosure, where that troublesome animal had finally been returned. Even now, after hours of coaxing, the elephant stood facing the mansion, as if keeping vigil. "The boy needs discipline," he insisted, but his voice had lost some of its conviction. Bradley sighed heavily. "Harrison, listen to yourself. You sound exactly like William. Is that really who you want to be? The man you swore you'd never become?" Before Harrison could respond, a security guard appeared at the door, looking anxious. "Mr. Montgomery, sir, there's a problem with the electrical system." The storm has triggered some kind of surge, and the backup generators aren't engaging properly. Harrison straightened, grateful for the interruption. I'll be right there. As he followed the guard, he called back to Bradley. We'll continue this discussion later. Check on Oliver, will you? Make sure he has water. Bradley's expression was unreadable as he nodded, watching Harrison stride away, once again choosing business over his son, in the small room that had become Oliver's prison. The boy huddled in his cage, listening to the storm growing outside. The single window showed flashes of lightning, casting bizarre shadows across the walls. Each thunderclap made him flinch, wrapping his arms tighter around himself. He was so hungry. His stomach had progressed from painful growling to a hollow ache that seemed to consume him from the inside. Worse than the hunger was the fear not just of his father's anger, but of the storm itself. Oliver had always been afraid of thunderstorms, something his father viewed as yet another weakness to overcome. Eleanor had comforted him during storms, holding him close and telling him stories until he fell asleep, safe in her arms. But Eleanor was gone, existing only in photographs Oliver sometimes secretly studied, trying to find pieces of himself. In her face, a particularly loud crack of thunder made him whimper. He pressed his face against his knees, trying to make himself as small as possible. "Mum," he whispered, though he had no real memories of her, only the stories Maria had told him when his father wasn't around. "I'm scared." The door opened, and Oliver looked up, expecting his father's stern face. Instead, Bradley entered, carrying a bottle of water and looking deeply troubled. "Hey, kiddo," Bradley said softly, approaching the cage. "How are you holding up?" Oliver didn't answer, unsure if this was some kind of test. His father sometimes sent others to check if Oliver was properly repentant. Bradley crouched beside the cage, his face level with Oliver's. "Your dad asked me to make sure you had water," he said, passing the bottle through the bars. "But between us, I think this has gone far enough." Oliver took the water gratefully, but still didn't speak. "I'm going to talk to your father again," Bradley continued. "Try to make him see reason. This isn't right, Oliver. You know that, don't you? This isn't how parents should treat their children." Oliver's eyes filled with tears. "I made him angry. I embarrassed him." "No," Bradley said firmly. "You acted like a normal 7-year-old. He's the one who's wrong, not you." Another thunderclap, closer now, shook the window. Oliver flinched, a small cry escaping him before he could stop it. Bradley's expression softened further. "You're afraid of the storm?" Oliver nodded reluctantly, expecting mockery or a lecture about conquering childish fears. Instead, Bradley reached through the bars and gently squeezed his shoulder. "I used to be scared of storms too, when I was your age. Your mom taught me. A trick, want to know what it is?" Surprised, Oliver nodded again. "Count the seconds between the lightning and the thunder. Each second means the storm is about a mile away. It's like a game you can track whether it's coming closer or moving away." As if on cue, lightning flashed again. Bradley began counting aloud. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, ... until the thunder rumbled. 4 seconds, he said. "So the storm is about 4 miles away. We'll count again with the next one. See if it's moving." For a few minutes, they played this game together, tracking the storm's approach. Oliver found himself relaxing slightly, the counting giving him something to focus on besides his fear. But their moment of peace was shattered as the lights suddenly flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. The emergency generator should have kicked in immediately, but something had gone wrong. Only the sporadic flashes of lightning illuminated the space. "Damn," Bradley muttered. Then, to Oliver, "It's okay. The power will be back soon. I'm going to go check what's happening, but I'll be right back. Promise." As Bradley left, the darkness seemed to close in around Oliver. Another lightning flash revealed the empty room, the bars of his cage casting long shadows like skeletal fingers across the floor. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the window in its frame, and beneath that sound, Oliver thought he heard something. Else a low, familiar rumble that vibrated through the floor beneath him. "Ellie," he whispered into the darkness, hope flickering faintly in his chest. "Is that you?" The storm had reached its full fury, rain lashing against the mansion in horizontal sheets. Security personnel huddled in their stations, more concerned with staying dry than maintaining their patrols. The power outage had thrown the estate into chaos. Backup generators had failed to engage. Communications systems were down, and emergency protocols had been activated. In the darkness of the storehouse, Rog listened intently as Maria and Bradley discussed Oliver's situation. "He's planning to keep the boy in there for days," Bradley was saying, his voice tight with anger. "Says it's the only way the lesson will take." "It's not right," Maria replied. "Even if you don't consider it abuse, which I do, the boy is already weak from lack of food. And now with this storm, ... I know." Bradley ran a hand through his hair. "I've tried talking to him, but he's convinced this is necessary. He's becoming more like William every day." "William?" Rog couldn't help asking, pushing the wardrobe door open slightly. Bradley whirled around, startled by the voice from the shadows. "Who's there?" Maria moved quickly to the wardrobe. "It's okay. This is Rog, Dr. Chen's nephew. He's trying to help Oliver." Rog emerged from his hiding place, Eleanor's letter still clutched in his hand. "Who's William?" Bradley studied him warily. "Harrison's father, a cruel, domineering bastard who believed that breaking a child's spirit was the path to raising a successful man." His eyes flicked to the letter in Roger's hand. "What's that?" "A letter from Harrison Montgomery to her husband," Rog explained, warning him not to become like his father. Bradley's expression darkened. "She always feared this would happen if something happened to her. That's why she made me promise to watch out for them both." "You haven't done a very good job," Rog said, bluntly. Bradley flinched as if struck. "No," he agreed quietly. "I haven't." A crash of thunder punctuated the moment, the storm directly overhead now. The mansion creaked and groaned against the onslaught. "We need to get Oliver out of that cage," Rog said, returning to the immediate problem. "Now, before Montgomery comes back." "The door is locked," Maria said. "Mr. Montgomery keeps the key with him, and the cage itself is padlocked," Bradley added. "He has that key too," Rog thought quickly. "There must be tools somewhere in the house. Bolt cutters, maybe." "In the maintenance shed," Maria suggested. "But in this storm, ... Another sound interrupted them, a distant crash, followed by shouting. All three froze, listening. What was that? Bradley moved to the door, peering out into the darkened hallway. "Sir," a security guard was running up the stairs, flashlight beam bouncing wildly. "Mr. Wells, the elephant hit's loose again." "What?" Bradley stepped into the hall. "How?" "The storm, the electric fence lost power with the rest of the systems. She broke through the gate again. She's heading for the house." Rog pushed past Bradley, addressing the guard directly. "Where's Montgomery?" The guard looked confused by the question. "In the east wing, sir. Trying to fix the generator. And Oliver, the boy. Still in the discipline room, I think." Rog made a decision. "Which way is the east wing from here?" The guard pointed. "Through the main hall, past the grand staircase. Then good." Rog turned to Bradley and Maria. "Keep Montgomery occupied as long as you can. I'm going to get Oliver out." "How?" Bradley demanded. "You don't have the keys." A smile tugged at Roger's lips. "I'm betting Ellie has her own plan for that." Without waiting for a response, Rog sprinted down the hallway, using the guard's directions to navigate away from the east wing and toward where Oliver was being held. The mansion was a labyrinth in the darkness, but he moved quickly, guided by the emergency exit sign's faint glow. As he neared the central part of the house, he heard a tremendous crash, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Ellie had found her way in. Following the commotion, Rog rounded a corner and stumbled to a halt at the sight before him. The massive elephant stood in what had once been an elegant sitting room, water pouring in through the shattered French doors she had demolished to enter the house. Her massive form was illuminated by lightning flashes, giving her an almost mythical appearance. But she didn't remain there. With purposeful steps that shook the floorboards, Ellie moved through the house, her trunk extended as if following a scent. Rog followed at a safe distance, watching in amazement as the elephant navigated the mansion's corridors with unexpected delicacy. Considering her size, she stopped outside a closed door, trumpeting softly. When there was no response, she pressed her massive head against it, testing its strength. "Oliver's in there?" Rog asked, knowing somehow that she understood. Ellie shifted her gaze to him, and in the dim emergency lighting, he could have sworn he saw recognition in her eyes. Then she turned back to the door and, with a decisive movement, slammed her head against it. The door splintered, but didn't give way entirely. Ellie backed up a few steps, preparing for another charge. "Wait," Rog said, trying the handle. "Locked." "As expected. Let me try something first." He examined the door solid wood, but the lock was a standard interior knob. Taking a deep breath, Rog rammed his shoulder against the door near the handle. Using the techniques he'd learned in a class, the frame cracked but held. Ellie watched, seemingly understanding his intent. When his second attempt also failed, she nudged him gently aside with her trunk, then hit the door with a controlled but powerful thrust of her head. This time, the door gave way with a splintering crash. Inside, illuminated by the beam of a small flashlight, Oliver sat wide-eyed in his cage, watching as the unlikely rescue party entered the room. "Ellie," he cried, his voice a mixture of disbelief and joy. The elephant trumpeted softly in response, moving to the cage with remarkable gentleness for a creature of her size. "Oliver," Rog said, kneeling beside the cage. "I'm Rog, Dr. Chen's nephew. We're going to get you out of here." Oliver's eyes darted between Rog and Ellie, hope and fear battling on his face. "My dad has the key. We don't need it," Rog assured him, examining the padlock. It was solid, no way to pick it without tools. "Ellie, can you help us?" As if understanding perfectly, Ellie reached her trunk through the bars of the cage, wrapping it gently around Oliver's small hand. The boy smiled through his tears at the touch. Then, with deliberate precision, Ellie grasped one of the bars with her trunk. She pulled, muscles rippling beneath her thick skin. The metal groaned in protest. Rog added his own strength, gripping another bar and pulling as hard as he could. The cage was sturdy, but not designed to withstand the combined determination of a man and an elephant. With a screech of bending metal, one bar twisted outward, creating a space just wide enough for a small, malnourished boy to slip through. "Come on," Rog urged, reaching into the gap to help Oliver out. The boy hesitated. "My dad will be angry." "Your dad is wrong," Rog said firmly. "No one should be treated this way. No one." A crash of thunder punctuated his words, and Oliver flinched. But then, gathering his courage, he wriggled through the opening, falling into Roger's waiting arms. The moment he was free, Ellie's trunk wrapped gently around him, lifting him from Roger's embrace and cradling him against her massive head. Oliver clung to her, burying his face against her rough skin, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs of relief. The touching reunion was cut short by shouting in the distance. Montgomery had discovered the intrusion. "We need to go," Rog urged. "Now." But where? The storm was still raging outside, and a 7-year-old boy couldn't flee into the night, especially not with an elephant in tow. As if reading his thoughts, Ellie turned, still holding Oliver close, and began making her way back through the house. "You have a plan?" Rog asked the elephant, surprised to find himself addressing her as an equal participant in this rescue mission. Ellie's determined stride was answer enough. Rog followed, hoping she knew what she was doing, and praying they wouldn't run into Montgomery before they reached safety. Harrison Montgomery sprinted through the darkened corridors of his mansion, rage and fear battling within him. The security team's reports were impossible. An elephant loose in his house, his son's cage broken open, the mysterious nephew of his zookeeper seemingly orchestrating it all. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The shattered French doors, the splintered door frame of the discipline room, the twisted metal cage with its bars bent outward as if made of wire instead of steel. "Find them," he shouted to the security personnel following him. "I want my son back now." "Sir, one guard ventured. The elephant, it's dangerous. Animal control is on their way. But with the storm, I don't care about the storm. Find that animal and my son, or you're all fired. The men scattered, flashlight beams dancing through the darkness as they searched. Harrison paused, trying to think like his quarry. Where would they go? Not outside in this deluge, not to the main entrance, which was heavily guarded. A sound from below caught his attention, a heavy, rhythmic thudding that vibrated through the floorboards. Without hesitation, he ran toward the grand staircase, taking the steps 2 at a time. Despite the darkness, as he reached the main floor, lightning illuminated the entrance hall for a brief, surreal moment. There, framed in the archway leading to the west wing, stood the elephant, his son perched on her back, clinging to her ears. Beside them stood the young man Roge, looking both defiant and protective. "Oliver," Harrison shouted, "get down from there immediately." The boy flinched at his father's voice, but didn't move to obey. Instead, he pressed himself closer to the elephant's broad head, as if seeking protection. "Stay back, Montgomery," Roge warned, stepping between Harrison and the elephant. "You've done enough damage." "That's my son you're kidnapping," Harrison snarled, advancing toward them. "Security will be here any second. You won't make it off this property." "This isn't about escaping," Roge replied, standing his ground. "This is about stopping you before you destroy that boy completely." "How dare you?" "No, how dare you?" Roger's voice was steel. "How dare you cage a child like an animal? How dare you starve your own son? How dare you become exactly what your wife feared you would?" Harrison faltered, the words hitting him like physical blows. "What do you know about my wife?" Roge pulled Eleanor's letter from his pocket. "She knew, Montgomery. She knew what your father did to you, and she was terrified you'd do the same to Oliver if she wasn't there to stop you." He held out the letter, read it. "See for yourself what Eleanor's dying thoughts were." Harrison stared at the envelope, recognizing Eleanor's handwriting with a jolt of pain. "Where did you get that?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is what's inside." A sudden commotion behind them interrupted the confrontation. Bradley and Maria appeared, followed by Dr. Chen and several security guards. "Harrison, stop this madness," Bradley pleaded, moving to stand beside Roge. "Look at what you're doing. Look at your son." Harrison did look then, really look, at the small figure huddled atop the elephant. Oliver was pale, thin, his eyes huge with fear in his gaunt face. He was trembling, though whether from cold, hunger, or terror, Harrison couldn't tell. Had he done this, reduced his son Lenor's son to this frightened, wasted child? "Oliver," he said, his voice softer now, "come here." But Oliver shook his head, shrinking back. "No, you'll put me back in the cage." A simple statement, delivered in his son's small, quavering voice, struck Harrison with the force of revelation. This was exactly what William Montgomery had done to him, created a child so terrified of his father that he expected only punishment and pain. "I promised Eleanor I would be different. I promised I wouldn't become my father." Yet here he was, his son cowering from him atop an elephant that had literally broken down walls to rescue him. The truth hit Harrison with crushing force. He had failed. Failed Eleanor. Failed Oliver. Failed Oliver. Failed himself. He began, but words failed him. The elephant watched him with those ancient, knowing eyes, her trunk curled protectively around Oliver. There was judgment in that gaze, Harrison thought, but also something else, a profound sadness, as if she understood the broken legacy he was perpetuating. Slowly, Harrison lowered himself to one knee, bringing himself to eye level with his son. "Oliver," he said quietly, "I won't put you back in the cage. Ever I was... I was wrong." Disbelief crossed Oliver's face, quickly followed by suspicion. He had heard his father admit error before, but it was always followed by a new, more subtle punishment. "I mean it," Harrison continued, his voice rough with emotion. "Please, son, come down. Let's talk." "I don't think," Roge began, but Bradley placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Wait," Bradley murmured. "Let them work this out." Harrison extended, his hand toward his son, palm or pan offering, not a demand. Please, Oliver. The boy hesitated, looking down at the elephant as if seeking her counsel. Ellie's trunk stroked his arm gently, and then, to everyone's amazement, she began to kneel, lowering herself and Oliver until the boy could easily step. To the ground, Oliver slid from Ellie's back, but didn't immediately approach his father. Instead, he stood beside the elephant, one small hand resting on her trunk. "You hurt me," he said simply, with the devastating honesty of childhood. "You locked me up and wouldn't let me eat, like grandfather did to you." Harrison flinched. "You know about that? Maria told me stories about how your dad was mean to you, how Mum helped you be different." Oliver's lower lip trembled. "But after she died, you changed back." The truth from a child's lips was unbearable. Harrison felt something crack inside him, a wall he had built long ago, reinforced with each passing year. "I did," he admitted, his voice barely audible over the storm still raging outside. "And I was wrong, Oliver. So wrong." For a long moment, father and son stared at each other across a gulf far wider than the few feet separating them physically. Then, with slow, hesitant steps, Oliver approached his kneeling father. Harrison remained perfectly still, afraid that any sudden movement would shatter this fragile moment. When Oliver finally stood before him, Harrison saw Eleanor in every line of the boy's face, her compassion, her strength, her capacity for forgiveness. "I miss Mum too," Oliver whispered, "even though I don't remember her." The simple statement broke the last of Harrison's resistance. Tears filled his eyes as he gently, cautiously opened his arms. "I'm so sorry, son. Can you ever forgive me?" Oliver studied his father's face for a long moment, searching for sincerity or deceit. Then, with the resilience only a child could possess, he stepped into his father's embrace. Behind them, Ellie trumpeted softly, as if approving this first small step toward healing. The storm had passed by morning, leaving behind a transformed landscape, trees stripped of leaves, flower beds destroyed, and the normally immaculate grounds of the Montgomery estate strewn with debris. Inside the mansion, a different kind of aftermath was unfolding. "He's severely dehydrated," the doctor informed Harrison as she emerged from Oliver's bedroom, "and the beginning stages of malnutrition. His body temperature is also concerning. Children shouldn't be kept in cold environments without adequate clothing or bedding." Harrison nodded, accepting each word like a physical blow. Will he be all right?" The doctor, a nonsense woman in her 50s who had known Harrison for years, fixed him with a stern gaze. "Physically, with proper care, yes, but Mr. Montgomery, I'm legally obligated to report suspected child abuse." "I understand," Harrison said quietly. "I've known you since you were Oliver's age," the doctor continued, her voice softening slightly. "I treated your broken arm when you were 10, the one your father said came from falling off your bike." Harrison's head snapped up in surprise. "I knew then it wasn't a bicycle accident," she said. "Just as I know these aren't normal disciplinary measures." She glanced toward Oliver's bedroom door. "That boy needs more than medical attention. He needs therapy, and so do you." "Yes," Harrison agreed, the fight gone out of him. "I'll arrange it immediately." "Good. I'm ordering hospitalization for him. He needs 4 fluids and monitoring." "Can't you treat him here? He's afraid of leaving Ellie." The doctor raised an eyebrow. "The elephant. Harrison, be reasonable, please," he said, a word that had rarely crossed his lips in recent years. "After what I've put him through, I can't separate him from the one thing that makes him feel safe." The doctor considered this, then sighed. "I'll make arrangements for home care, but I want round-the-clock nursing, proper equipment, and daily visits from me. And if his condition worsens even slightly, he goes to the hospital. Non-negotiable." "Agreed. Thank you." As the doctor left to make the necessary calls, Harrison leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. He hadn't slept, spending the night in a chair beside Oliver's bed, watching his son's restless sleep, confronting the magnitude of what he had nearly destroyed. Bradley approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "How is he?" "Dehydrated, malnourished, traumatized. Harrison took the offered cup, but didn't drink. Exactly what you'd expect for a child who's been caged and starved by his father. Bradley didn't contradict him or offer hollow comfort. Instead, he said simply, "What happens now? Now I face the consequences. Child Protective Services, possibly criminal charges." Harrison laughed bitterly. The great Harrison Montgomery, brought down not by business rivals or market forces, but by his own cruelty. "Self-pity doesn't suit you," Bradley observed. "It's not self-pity, it's accountability. Something I should have learned long ago." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of years of enabling and denial hanging between them. "I should have stopped you," Bradley finally said. "I saw the signs. I knew what was happening. But I told myself it wasn't my place, that you were grieving, that you'd find your way back eventually. This isn't on you. Some of it is. I promised Eleanor I'd look out for both of you." Harrison nodded, acknowledging the truth in this. "We've both failed her." The bedroom door opened, and Maria emerged, her face lined with worry, but her posture straight with determination. "He's asking for you," she told Harrison. "And for Ellie." "Ellie is back in her enclosure," Harrison replied. "Dr. Chen is checking her 4 injuries. With respect, Mr. Montgomery, I think the boy needs to see her, to know she's safe." Harrison hesitated, then nodded. "I'll arrange it. Thank you, Maria, for everything. For trying to protect him when I wouldn't." Maria's expression softened slightly. "It's not too late, Mr. Montgomery. Children are resilient, and they forgive, even when perhaps they shouldn't." With those sobering words hanging in the air, Harrison steeled himself and entered his son's bedroom. Oliver lay in his large bed, looking even smaller against the plush pillows. Anne, the 4th line, ran into his arm, and a nurse was adjusting the flow. His face brightened slightly when he saw his father, though wariness remained in his eyes. "Dad," he said, his voice weak but clear. "Hey, buddy," Harrison replied, the old endearment feeling foreign on his tongue after so long. He approached the bed cautiously, as if his son were a wild animal that might bolt. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, and my tummy hurts." Oliver glanced around the room anxiously. "Where's Ellie? Is she okay?" "She's fine," Harrison assured him, perching carefully on the edge of the bed. "Dr. Chen is taking good care of her." "She broke the window to save me," Oliver said, a note of pride in his voice. "And the cage. She's the strongest, smartest elephant ever." "Yes," Harrison agreed softly. "She is." A silence fell between them, heavy with all the words that needed saying, but that neither knew how to begin. Oliver Harrison finally said, "What I did to you, it was wrong, very wrong, and I'm so sorry." Oliver studied his father's face, searching for sincerity, like how grandfather was wrong to you. Harrison flinched but nodded. "Yes, exactly like that. Maria says he hurt you a lot. That's why you hurt me sometimes." The simple observation, delivered without accusation, pierced Harrison more deeply than any recrimination could have. "That's true," he acknowledged, "but it's not an excuse. Nothing excuses what I did to you." Oliver seemed to consider this. "Ellie was hurt too before she came here. Dr. Chen told me. Poachers killed her mum and captured her. But she's not mean. She's gentle." Harrison marveled at his son's wisdom, delivered with the straightforward clarity of childhood. "You're right. Being hurt doesn't mean you have to hurt others. Ellie understood that better than I did." Oliver's small hand crept toward his father's. After a moment's hesitation, Harrison gently took it, marveling at how tiny and fragile it felt in his grasp. "I want to be better, Oliver," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I want to be the father you deserve, the father your mother wanted me to be." "Mom would be sad about the cage," Oliver said, matter-of-factly. "Yes," Harrison agreed, a lump forming in his throat. "She would be heartbroken." "Can I see Ellie?" Oliver asked, changing the subject with the mercurial focus of childhood. "Please, I need to thank her." Harrison hesitated, thinking of logistics, of propriety, of the doctor's orders for rest. Then he thought of what he owed this child after all he had put him through. Yes, he decided. As soon as the doctor says you're strong enough to be moved, we'll go see Ellie, I promise. Oliver's face lit up, a glimpse of the carefree child he should have been all along. Really? You promise? I promise. Harrison squeezed his son's hand gently. And Oliver, I'm going to make other promises too, about how things will be different from now on. But I want you to know that I understand if you don't believe me right away. Trust has to be earned back. I know that. Oliver nodded. Solemnly, Ellie says you have to prove things with actions, not just words. Harrison blinked, startled. Ellie ... tells you things. Not like talking, Oliver explained, as if to someone very slow, but she shows me, with her eyes and her trunk and how she moves. She's very wise. Despite everything, Harrison felt a smile tug at his lips. Well, then I'll have to prove myself to both of you. Outside the window, the sun had finally broken through the clouds, casting warm light across the room. It illuminated Oliver's face, highlighting how much he resembled Eleanor, the same thoughtful eyes, the same gentle smile. For the first time in 7 years, Harrison allowed himself to really see his wife in his son, not with pain, but with gratitude. And with that recognition came a silent vow. I will not fail him again. I will not fail you, Eleanor. The Crescent Hills Care Facility sat nestled among ancient oaks, its manicured grounds and tasteful architecture belying its true nature as one of the most exclusive nursing homes in the country. Harrison had spared no expense for his father's care, ensuring William Montgomery had the best of everything: private suite, personal nurses, gourmet meals, not out of love, but obligation. And perhaps, Harrison admitted to himself as he walked the hushed corridors, a desire to prove he was better than the man who had raised him. Yet here he was, facing the undeniable truth that he had become exactly what he despised. Mr. Montgomery is in the solarium, a nurse informed him, her professional smile never reaching her eyes. The staff knew who William Montgomery was, what he had been. The old man made no effort to disguise his nature. Even in his diminished state, Harrison found his father seated by the window, a chessboard set up before him, though he played alone. At 84, William Montgomery remained an imposing figure, spine straight, white hair perfectly combed, eyes sharp with intelligence, if not kindness. Twice in 1 month, William observed without looking up from the chessboard. To what do I owe this unusual level of filial devotion? Harrison sat opposite his father, studying the familiar face that still appeared in his nightmares occasionally. I need to talk to you about the boy. It wasn't a question. William moved a bishop across the board, capturing his own pawn. Your housekeeper called, quite distraught. Something about a cage. Harrison's stomach clenched. Of course Maria would have contacted William. Despite everything, she maintained the misguided belief that a grandfather should know about his grandson's welfare. Yes, Harrison admitted, about Oliver. William's eyes flicked up, cold and assessing. You're implementing firmer discipline. Good. The boy needs it. No. Harrison's voice was quiet but firm. That's not why I'm here. No. William arched an eyebrow. Then enlighten me. Harrison took a deep breath, steadying himself. I came to tell you that you were wrong. About everything. About how to raise a child. About what makes a man. About strength and weakness. All of it. William's face hardened. Ah. So we're having this conversation again. I thought we settled this when you were 20. We didn't settle anything. I walked away. That's different. And yet, William gestured expansively. You've built an empire. Become the success I always knew you could be, with the right motivation. My methods worked. Boy, the results speak for themselves. Do they? Harrison leaned forward. I'm a successful businessman, yes, but I'm a failure as a father, as a husband, as a human being. William waved a dismissive hand. Sentiment. Eleanor filled your head with that nonsense. Eleanor saved me. Harrison countered. She showed me there was another way to live, to love, And when I lost her, I threw it all away. Became you. You say that as if it's a tragedy. It is. Harrison met his father's gaze steadily. I put my 7-year-old son in a cage, father. Denied him food because he spilled a glass of water at dinner, because he embarrassed me in front of investors, because he reminds me of his mother, and it hurts to look at him. For the first time, William seemed unsettled. The Montgomery method requires discipline. But this isn't about the Montgomery method, Harrison interrupted. This is about abuse. What you did to me was abuse. What I did to Oliver was abuse. And it stops now. William's face flushed with anger. You ungrateful. I'm not finished, Harrison said coldly. I came here today to tell you that I'm breaking the cycle. Oliver will never know the kind of fear and pain I grew up with. He'll never wonder if his father loves him. He'll never have to earn basic kindness or respect. You'll ruin him, William spat. Make him soft, weak. No. Harrison shook his head. I nearly ruined him by following your example. True weakness isn't compassion or gentleness. It's being so afraid of your own vulnerability that you have to crush it in others, especially your own child. William stared at his son, seeming to truly see him for the first time in decades. Something flickered in the old man's eyes, not remorse, exactly, but perhaps recognition. You sound like her, he said finally. Eleanor, I hope so. She was the best of us. William looked away, back to his chessboard. So, you've come to what? Denounce me? Renounce your inheritance? Make some grand gesture of defiance? No, Harrison said simply. I came to say goodbye. William's head snapped up. What? I won't be back, father. And Oliver won't be visiting either. Whatever this is between ESD's cycle of pain and resentment ends with me. You can't just. I can. I should have, years ago. Harrison stood, straightening his jacket. Your care will continue. I'll honor that obligation. But our relationship is over. For the first time in Harrison's memory, William Montgomery seemed at a loss for words. The old man's hands trembled slightly as he moved a chess piece, a meaningless gesture, a stalling tactic. You think it's so easy? William finally asked, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. To simply decide to be different. To change what's in your blood. Not easy, Harrison acknowledged. The hardest thing I've ever done, but necessary. And if you fail, if this ... transformation doesn't take... It was a fair question, one Harrison had asked himself repeatedly over the sleepless nights since Oliver's rescue. Then I'll keep trying, he said simply, every day. For Oliver, for Eleanor's memory, and for myself. William studied his son's face, searching for weakness or indecision. Finding none, he gave a curt nod, as if accepting the terms of a business deal. You always were stubborn, he said, almost approvingly. Got that from me, maybe, Harrison conceded. But what I do with that stubbornness, that's my choice. He turned to leave, then paused at the door, looking back at the diminished figure of the man who had loomed so large throughout his life. Goodbye, father. William didn't respond, already repositioning chess pieces as if the conversation and his son had never existed. Harrison walked through the facilities, corridors, with a lighter step than when he had entered. The confrontation hadn't provided the catharsis he might have hoped for, but it had been necessary. A line drawn, a declaration made. As he emerged into the sunlight, his phone buzzed with a text from Bradley. Oliver asking for you. Doctor says he can see Ellie today if he uses a wheelchair. Thoughts? Harrison smiled, tapping out his reply. On my way. Tell him yes. The drive back to the estate gave Harrison time to reflect on the changes already in motion. Child Protective Services had visited, conducting lengthy interviews with Oliver, Maria, and the staff. They had been professional but thorough, making it clear that the situation was serious. Harrison had cooperated fully, agreeing to all their requirements: therapy for both him and Oliver, parenting classes, scheduled check-ins. The legal consequences were still pending, though Bradley's team of lawyers was working to minimize them, arguing that Harrison's immediate cooperation and genuine remorse should count in his favor. But those weren't Harrison's primary concerns now. What mattered was rebuilding his relationship with his son. The trust he had shattered, the home that should have been a sanctuary rather than a prison. And, oddly enough, an elephant seemed to be showing him the way as he pulled into the estate's driveway. Harrison noticed workers already repairing the storm damage, clearing fallen branches, replacing broken windows. The physical wounds would heal quickly. The emotional ones would take far longer. But for the first time in 7 years, Harrison Montgomery felt something like hope. Not the cold satisfaction of a business deal closed or an enemy defeated, but the warm, fragile promise of something being born anew. He parked and hurried inside, eager to keep his promise to Oliver. Today would be a new beginning for both of them. The mansion felt different to Harrison as he walked its corridors, emptier somehow. Despite the workers repairing storm damage and the medical staff attending to Oliver, without conscious decision, his feet carried him not to his son's room, but to a part of the house he had avoided for years. Oliver's bedroom door stood ajar, and Harrison paused, suddenly uncertain. This was his son's private space, yet he realized, with a pang, that he had rarely entered it, leaving Oliver's care almost entirely to Maria. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was immaculately kept, Maria's doing, no doubt, but what struck Harrison was how impersonal it felt. Unlike most children's rooms, there were few toys, no posters on the walls, no evidence of a child's natural exuberance and self-expression. Instead, the decor was tasteful but sterile, like a high-end hotel room, except for one wall, hidden behind the door, where it wouldn't be immediately visible to someone entering, was a collage of drawings, dozens of them, all of elephants. Some were clumsy, childish renderings, others showed surprising skill for a 7-year-old, were clearly done with care and love. Harrison moved closer, studying the drawings. Many depicted Ellie, recognizable by a distinctive mark on her trunk that Oliver had faithfully reproduced. Others showed elephants in family groups, playing together, protecting their young. "He hid them," came a voice from the doorway. Harrison turned to find Maria watching him, her expression unreadable. "What do you mean?" "The drawings." She gestured to the wall. "He knew you didn't approve of his interest in animals, so he kept them hidden. Only put them up when you were away on business." The revelation was like a knife to Harrison's heart, that his son had felt the need to hide something so innocent, so fundamentally part of who he was. "I didn't know he could draw like this," Harrison said, touching one of the more detailed sketches. "He's been teaching himself. From books." Maria stepped into the room, moving to the bookshelf. She pulled out what appeared to be a mathematics textbook and opened it, revealing a hollowed-out interior filled with small, colorful volumes. "These are his real treasures." Harrison took one, a children's encyclopedia of elephants. The pages were dog-eared, the margins filled with Oliver's neat handwriting, adding facts or observations of his own. "He's been studying," Harrison murmured, leafing through the book. "All this time, ... He wants to be a zoologist, or an elephant conservationist." Maria's voice held a note of challenge. "Not a businessman." Harrison closed the book carefully, running his hand over its worn cover. "I never asked him what he wanted." "No," Maria agreed. "You didn't." Shamefaced, Harrison continued exploring the room with new eyes. He found more hidden evidence of Oliver's passion, small hand-carved wooden elephant tucked under the mattress, a notebook filled with observations about Ellie's behavior, a carefully folded article about elephant sanctuaries in Thailand. But it was the discovery in the bedside table that finally broke him. Behind a stack of approved reading materials, mathematics, workbooks, and children's classics lay a photograph. It showed Eleanor, heavily pregnant, smiling radiantly as she looked down at a book in her hands. "The Elephant's Child" by Rudyard Kipling. "She used to read to him," Maria said softly, noticing what Harrison had found. "Before he was born, she said elephants were noble, creatures intelligent, compassionate, family-oriented, that she wanted her son to have those qualities." Harrison's vision blurred as he stared at the photograph. "I never knew. There is much you don't know about your son, Mr. Montgomery," Maria said, her voice gentle despite the rebuke in her words. "Or your wife." She moved to the closet and reached to the back of the highest shelf, retrieving a small wooden box. "Mrs. Montgomery left this for Oliver. Asked me to give it to him when he was old enough to understand." Harrison took the box, his hands trembling slightly. Inside lay a collection of letters, each in an envelope marked with a future date or milestone: "For your first day of school, when you feel lonely, when you're angry with your father." She knew she might not survive the birth, Maria explained. The doctors had warned her, so she prepared these to guide him through the moments she feared she would miss. Harrison pulled out one envelope, different from the others. It was addressed simply to Harrison. "When you've forgotten your promise." "She knew me too well," he whispered. Maria nodded. "She loved you both very much. That's why she tried to protect Oliver, even from beyond the grave." "Has he read these?" Harrison asked, carefully replacing the letter. "Some, when he needed her." Maria took the box and returned it to its hiding place. "Others are for when he's older." Harrison stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the hidden pieces of his son's soul and his wife's enduring love. How blind he had been. How willfully ignorant of the treasures right before him. "Thank you," he said to Maria, "for protecting him when I wouldn't, for keeping these things safe." Maria's stern expression softened slightly. "It's not too late, Mr. Montgomery. Oliver has his mother's heart, forgiving, generous, and he needs his father." "Not the father I've been," Harrison said firmly. "No," she agreed. "He needs the man Mrs. Montgomery loved, the man who exists somewhere beneath all this." She gestured vaguely, encompassing the mansion, his wealth, the empire he had built while neglecting what mattered most. Harrison nodded, understanding completely. "I should get back to him. I promised we'd visit Ellie today." "He's ready," Maria said. "The nurse has him in the wheelchair. They're waiting for you in the garden room." As Harrison turned to leave, Maria called after him, "Mr. Montgomery, there's something else you should see." She led him across the hall to what had once been Eleanor's art studio. After her death, Harrison had locked the door, unable to bear the reminders of her creative spirit. Now, Maria produced a key and opened it, dust motes dancing in the shaft of light from the hallway. "I've kept it clean," she said, "but everything is as she left it." Harrison stepped inside hesitantly. The familiar scent of oil paints and canvas still lingered, fainter now, but unmistakable. Eleanor's easel stood by the window, a half-finished painting still resting on a tail landscape of the estate grounds, as they had been before the zoo was built. But what caught Harrison's eye was a smaller canvas leaning against the wall, a portrait, clearly done from a photograph, of a young Harrison, not the hard-edged businessman he had become, but the idealistic college student Eleanor had fallen in love with. In the painting, he was laughing, his face open and joyful, in a way he scarcely recognized anymore. She was working on this when... Maria didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Harrison touched the canvas gently, as if he might somehow connect with Eleanor through the brushstrokes she had laid down in her final days. "I've been such a fool," he whispered. "Yes," Maria agreed, but without malice. "But fools can learn wisdom, Mr. Montgomery, if they choose to." Leaving the studio, Harrison felt both hollowed out and strangely full emptied of the bitter pride that had sustained him for so long, yet filled with a new determination. He would honor Eleanor's memory, not through wealth or success, but by becoming the father she had believed he could be. And the first step awaited him downstairs, where Oliver sat in his wheelchair, eager to visit the elephant who had saved him in more ways than one. The temporary enclosure where Ellie was being kept stood at a safe distance from the damaged main elephant habitat. As Harrison wheeled Oliver across the grounds, he noticed how his son's posture changed, straightening with excitement, eyes bright with anticipation despite his physical weakness. Dr. Chen and Rog were waiting for them, conversing quietly by the entrance to the enclosure. They fell silent as Harrison approached, their expressions guarded. Dr. Chen, Harrison acknowledged with a nod, Mr. Patel, thank you for arranging this visit. Roger's face remained stern, but Dr. Chen offered a professional smile. Ellie has been restless. I think she senses Oliver is unwell. Can I see her now? Oliver asked eagerly, trying to push himself up from the wheelchair. Careful, Harrison cautioned, placing a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. Remember what the doctor said about moving slowly. To Harrison's surprise, Rog stepped forward and crouched beside the wheelchair, addressing Oliver directly. Ellie, very excited to see you. But we need to be careful with her too. She was scraped up a bit during the rescue. She got hurt helping me. Oliver's face fell. Just some minor abrasions, Dr. Chen assured him. Nothing serious, but it means you both need to be gentle with each other today. Oliver nodded solemnly. I understand. Dr. Chen opened the gate to the temporary enclosure, large fenced area with a simple shelter. She's inside. I'll go first to make sure she's calm. As Dr. Chen entered, Harrison found himself face to face with Rog, who had moved to stand beside him. Mr. Patel, Harrison began awkwardly, I owe you an apology, and my gratitude. What you did for Oliver, I didn't do it for you, Rog interrupted, quietly. I did it because it was right. I know, that makes it mean even more. Harrison met the younger man's gaze directly. You saw a child in trouble and acted without hesitation, without concern for consequences. That kind of moral clarity, I've lost sight of it over the years. Rog studied him, searching for sincerity. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because he gave a small nod. Just don't make me regret giving you a second chance. I won't, Harrison promised, and neither will the law. I've instructed my lawyers not to fight any charges CPS brings. I'll accept whatever consequences come. Before Rog could respond, Dr. Chen called from inside the enclosure. We're ready for you. Harrison wheeled Oliver through the gate, his heart pounding inexplicably. He had never paid much attention to the animals in his private zoo, viewing them as just another status symbol, another asset. But now he found himself nervous, almost reverent, as they approached the elephant who had broken into his home and shattered more than just windows and doors. Ellie stood in the center of the enclosure, her massive form somehow graceful, despite her size. When she spotted Oliver, her ears spread wide, and she made a soft rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath them. Ellie, Oliver called, his voice stronger than it had been in days. He tried again to rise from the wheelchair. Slowly, Harrison reminded him, helping Oliver to his feet. He kept a supportive arm around his son's waist as the boy took shaky steps toward the elephant. Ellie moved forward to meet them, her trunk extended toward Oliver. With remarkable gentleness, she wrapped her trunk around the boy's outstretched hand, as if greeting an old friend. The joy on Oliver's face was transformative. Color returned to his pale cheeks, and his smile a real smile. One Harrison realized he hadn't seen in far too long lit up his entire being. I missed you, Oliver told the elephant, stroking her trunk with his free hand. Thank you for saving me. Ellie made another rumbling sound, then delicately touched Oliver's face with her trunk, as if checking for injuries. I'm okay, Oliver assured her, just a little tired, but I'm getting better. Harrison stood slightly back, witnessing the extraordinary bond between his son and this majestic creature. He had always dismissed Oliver's interest in animals as childish, unimportant. Now he saw the depth of connection, the genuine communication happening between them. She was very worried about you, Dr. Chen explained, moving to stand beside Harrison. Elephants form deep attachments. They're emotionally complex animals. They grieve, they remember, they protect those they consider family. Family, Harrison repeated softly. Yes, in elephant herds, the bonds between members are incredibly strong. They'll risk their own safety to protect each other, especially the young. Harrison watched as Ellie continued her gentle examination of Oliver, who was talking to her in a low, earnest voice, telling her about his medical treatment and how he was feeling. I've been a fool about many things, Harrison admitted quietly to Dr. Chen. The animals, my son, what matters in life. Dr. Chen nodded, his expression thoughtful. It's never too late to learn. Elephants teach us much about compassion, if we're willing to observe. Rog approached, carrying a bucket of fruit. "Oliver," he called, "would you like to feed Ellie? She's been asking about these mangoes all morning." Oliver's face lit up even further. "Can I, Dad? Please?" The simple question, asked without fear or hesitation, pierced Harrison's heart. How long had it been since his son had asked him for anything so openly, so trustingly? "Of course," he said, helping Oliver sit on a small bench where he could rest. While feeding the elephant, Rog handed pieces of fruit to Oliver, who offered them to Ellie one by one. The elephant accepted each gift delicately, her trunk so precise in its movements that she never touched Oliver's fingers, though she could easily have taken his entire hand into her mouth. "She's so gentle," Harrison observed, amazed. "Elephants understand their own strength," Dr. Chen explained. "They're conscious of how they interact with smaller, more fragile beings." The lesson wasn't lost on Harrison. As they watched Oliver and Ellie together, Rog turned to Harrison. "What happens to the zoo now? To Ellie?" It was a question Harrison had been considering since the night of the storm. "I've been making calls to conservation groups, wildlife experts. The private zoo was another mistake, a vanity project. These animals deserve better." "You're closing it?" Dr. Chen asked, sounding concerned. "Transforming it," Harrison corrected. "Most of the animals will go to accredited zoos or sanctuaries. But Ellie?" He glanced at his son, who was laughing as the elephant playfully sprayed a small amount of water over his head. "I don't think I can separate them." "What are you proposing?" Rog asked, his professional interest clearly piqued. "I'm not sure yet, but I have the land, the resources. With the right expertise, perhaps this place could become something meaningful. A sanctuary, maybe. A place where Ellie and others like her could live with dignity." Dr. Chen and Rog exchanged surprised glances. "That would require significant changes," Dr. Chen said carefully. "Proper habitats, more space, different protocols." "I'm aware," Harrison replied, "and I'm willing to make those changes. If you'd be interested in helping design such a facility." He left the offer hanging, uncertain if they would want any further association with him after what they had witnessed. Rog studied him intently. "That would depend on your motives, Mr. Montgomery. Is this about genuinely making amends, or just easing your conscience?" It was a fair question. Harrison considered it honestly before answering. "Both, I suppose. I can't change what I've done, but I can try to create something good from the wreckage. For Oliver, for these animals, for—" He hesitated, then added softly, "for Eleanor. She would have wanted this." Rog seemed satisfied with the answer. "I'd be willing to consult. My dissertation was on elephant rehabilitation in habitats. I'd offer my expertise as well," Dr. Chen added. "But only if we do this properly. No compromises on the animals' welfare." "Agreed," Harrison said firmly. "No compromises." From across the enclosure, Oliver called out, "Dad, come meet Ellie properly. She wants to know you better." Harrison hesitated, suddenly nervous. "I'm not sure." "It's okay," Rog assured him, a hint of amusement in his voice. "She doesn't hold grudges. Unlike humans." Taking a deep breath, Harrison approached his son and the elephant who had broken into his home to save him. As he drew near, Ellie's massive head turned toward him, her eyes intelligent and assessing, seeming to look straight into his soul. "Hello, Ellie," he said softly, feeling strangely vulnerable before this creature's wise gaze. "Thank you for protecting my son when I failed to." Ellie extended her trunk toward him, and after a moment's hesitation, Harrison reached out to touch it. The contact was brief but profound in acknowledgement, perhaps even a tentative truce. "See," Oliver said, beaming. "She's giving you a chance, just like I am." Out of the mouths of babes, Harrison thought, humbled by his son's capacity for forgiveness, a quality he had inherited from his mother, not his father. "I don't deserve it," he admitted, "but I'm grateful for it all the same." And standing there, in the presence of an elephant's wisdom and a child's forgiveness, Harrison Montgomery felt something long dormant within him begin to stir back to life. The weeks that followed brought changes to the Montgomery estate that would have been unimaginable just a month earlier. Construction crews worked steadily, but they weren't rebuilding the damaged sections of the mansion to their former grandeur. Instead, they were converting the entire East Wing into a state-of-the-art medical and rehabilitation facility for elephants. Harrison sat in what had once been his formal dining room, now transformed into a conference space filled with conservation experts, architects, and zoologists. Blueprints and environmental impact reports covered the table where crystal and fine china had once gleamed. The wetland habitat needs to be expanded by at least another acre, Rog was explaining, pointing to a section of the plans. Elephants in the wild spend up to 16 hours a day foraging. We need to recreate that experience as authentically as possible. Harrison nodded, making a note. Not a problem. We can incorporate part of the eastern property line. It's undeveloped. Dr. Chen, who had agreed to stay on as the lead veterinarian for the project, studied another set of plans. The medical facility is coming along nicely. State-of-the-art equipment, enough space for even the largest bull elephants. Better than most zoos in the country. That's the idea, Harrison said, to set a new standard. The meeting continued, addressing the countless details involved in transforming a private zoo into a legitimate sanctuary. Harrison listened carefully, asked questions, deferred to the experts. This was their domain, not his, and he was determined to do this right. As the meeting concluded and the specialists filed out, Bradley remained behind, looking bemused. "What?" Harrison asked, gathering his notes. "Nothing," Bradley replied. "It's just ... If someone had told me a month ago that Harrison Montgomery would be converting his mansion into an elephant sanctuary, I'd have said they were delusional." Harrison smiled faintly. Life takes unexpected turns. "Speaking of which," Bradley said, his expression growing serious, "the DA called. They've decided not to pursue criminal charges." Harrison looked up sharply. "Why not?" "What I did was terrible, yes," Bradley agreed. "But they've taken into account your cooperation, the steps you're taking with therapy and parenting classes, and the fact that Oliver is clearly recovering well under your care. CPS will continue monitoring the situation, of course." Harrison nodded, feeling a complex mix of relief and something like disappointment. Part of him had been prepared to face more tangible consequences, perhaps even felt he deserved them. "How is the boy today?" Bradley asked, changing the subject. "Better," Harrison said, unable to keep the pride from his voice. "The doctor says he's making remarkable progress. His appetite is returning, and he's been able to spend more time out of bed each day, and the nightmares." Harrison's expression sobered. "Still happening?" "The therapist says that's to be expected. Trauma doesn't disappear overnight." "No," Bradley agreed quietly. "It doesn't." They both knew he wasn't just talking about Oliver. "He wants to visit the construction site today," Harrison continued. "See the progress on Ellie's new habitat. If he feels strong enough, I thought I'd take him after lunch." "You've changed, Harrison," Bradley observed. "I haven't seen you this engaged, this ... present, since before Eleanor died." Harrison was saved from having to respond by a soft knock at the door. Maria entered, her expression unusually bright. "Mr. Montgomery, Oliver is asking for you. He's had a good morning with his tutor and finished his lunch. He says he feels strong enough for the visit you promised." Harrison's face lit up. "Wonderful. Tell him I'll be right there." As Maria left, Bradley stood to go. "The board meeting is tomorrow at 10. Do you want me to reschedule?" Harrison considered this. The old Harrison would never have missed a board meeting, would have prioritized business above all else. "No," he decided. "I'll be there. Oliver has physical therapy in the morning anyway." He paused, then added, "But only for 2 hours. I promise to take him to see the new elephant transportation vehicle when it arrives." Bradley nodded, smiling. "Balance? That's good." "I'm trying," Harrison admitted. Every day, when he reached Oliver's room, Harrison found his son sitting up in bed, Wearing a new outfit, Maria had helped him pick out khaki shorts and a t-shirt with an elephant silhouette on the front. His legs still looked thin, but his face had regained some of its color, and his eyes were bright with excitement. "Dad, can we go see the new habitat? Rog told me they're putting in a mud wallow today." Harrison smiled at his son's enthusiasm. "If you feel strong enough. We'll take it slow, okay?" Oliver nodded eagerly. "I've been practicing with the walker. The physical therapist says I'm doing really well." "That's my boy," Harrison said warmly, helping Oliver into the wheelchair they still used for longer distances. Determined, as he wheeled Oliver through the mansion toward the construction site, Harrison was struck by how differently he moved through the space now. Before, he had strode these halls with purpose, but little awareness, focused always on the next deal, the next acquisition. Now he noticed details, the way sunlight patterned the floor through the windows, the sound of Oliver's excited chatter, the subtle changes in his son's energy and comfort throughout the day. Outside, the June weather was perfect warm, but not hot, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of freshly turned earth from the construction site. Workers in hard hats nodded respectfully as Harrison wheeled Oliver along the newly poured accessible pathways that would eventually allow visitors to observe the elephants from a respectful distance. "Look, Dad." Oliver pointed toward a massive structure taking shape near the center of what had once been formal gardens. "That's going to be Ellie's barn for the winter." "It is," Harrison confirmed. "Dr. Chen says it's important that she have warm shelter during the cold months, but also enough space to move around comfortably. And there's going to be room for other elephants too, right? So she won't be lonely." "That's right. Rog is already in contact with several conservation groups about rescued elephants that might join her here." Oliver's face grew serious. "Elephants shouldn't be alone. They need families, just like people." Harrison placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "You're right, they do." They continued their tour, stopping to rest whenever Oliver seemed tired. At each location, Harrison explained the features being built, drawing on what he had learned from the experts he'd hired. Oliver listened intently, occasionally offering his own insights gleaned from his secret elephant studies. "Dad," Oliver asked as they paused by what would become a deep bathing pool, "what's going to happen to the mansion when this is all done? Are we still going to live there?" Harrison had been considering this very question. "Would you like to?" Oliver seemed to think about it carefully. "Parts of it. I like my room now that I can put my elephant drawings up. And I like the library, but a lot of it feels too big, too fancy." "I know what you mean," Harrison admitted. "I was thinking we might convert more of it. Keep living quarters for us, but use the rest for the sanctuary. Offices, education centers, maybe even a small museum about elephant conservation." "That sounds amazing." Oliver's face lit up. "Could I help design the museum? I have lots of ideas." "I'm counting on it," Harrison said, smiling at his son's enthusiasm. "This is going to be your legacy someday, after all." The words were out before Harrison had fully considered them, but as soon as he spoke them, he knew they were true. The Montgomery fortune would no longer be built solely on real estate and corporate acquisitions. It would be tied to this place, this sanctuary, this act of redemption and restoration. Eleanor would have approved as if reading his thoughts. Oliver said quietly, "Mum would have loved this, wouldn't she?" Harrison's throat tightened. "Yes, she would have." "Maria showed me more of Mum's letters," Oliver continued. "The ones she wrote before I was born. She liked elephants too." "She did," Harrison confirmed, remembering the painting in Eleanor's studio. "She believed they had much to teach us about family, about caring for one another." "Is that why you're building the sanctuary? Because of what Mom would have wanted?" Harrison considered the question carefully. "Partly," he admitted, "but also because of you, because of Ellie, because I'm learning, very late, what truly matters." Oliver reached up and took his father's hand, a gesture of such simple trust that Harrison had to blink back tears. They continued their tour, eventually reaching the temporary enclosure where Ellie was housed. The elephant was using her trunk to investigate a pile of fresh browse that had been delivered that morning, but she immediately turned toward them when they approached. Ellie, Oliver called, his face glowing with happiness. "We came to tell you about your new home." The elephant ambled toward them, her eyes fixed on Oliver with what could only be described as affection. She extended her trunk through the fence, and Oliver reached out to touch it gently. "It's going to be amazing," he told her earnestly, "with a huge pool for swimming, and lots of trees, and special scratching posts, because Raj says elephants love to scratch against things." Ellie rumbled softly, as if acknowledging the description. "And guess what?" Oliver continued excitedly. "Dad says once it's ready, other elephants might come live here too, so you'll have friends." Harrison watched the interaction, marveling at the bond between his son and this extraordinary creature, the elephant who had broken through barriers, both physical and emotional, to rescue a child she had no biological connection to, but had recognized as family nonetheless. There was wisdom there, a lesson he was still learning, that family was not merely about blood or obligation, but about choice, about seeing someone's vulnerability and choosing to protect rather than exploit it, about recognizing suffering and moving to alleviate it, even at personal risk. Ellie had understood this instinctively. Harrison was learning it day by day, stumbling sometimes, but committed to the journey. "Dad," Oliver's voice broke through his thoughts. "Can I get out of the wheelchair for a minute? I want to show Ellie how much stronger I'm getting." "Of course," Harrison said, helping Oliver to his feet and handing him the lightweight walker he used for support. "Just a few steps, though. Don't overdo it." Oliver nodded, concentrating as he took several cautious steps toward the fence where Ellie waited patiently. When he reached it, he beamed triumphantly. "See, Ellie, I'm getting better. Soon I'll be able to walk all around your new habitat with you." The elephant's trunk gently touched his cheek, a gesture of such tenderness that Harrison felt his eyes fill with tears again. In that moment, watching his son and the elephant who had saved him, Harrison Montgomery made a silent vow. He would continue this path of redemption, not just for a few weeks or months in the aftermath of crisis, but for the rest of his life. He would become the father Oliver deserved, the man Eleanor had loved, the human being he was capable of being when he set aside the cold ambition that had nearly destroyed everything that mattered. It wouldn't be easy. Old habits died hard, and the business world wouldn't understand or support this transformation. There would be setbacks, moments of doubt, the temptation to revert to familiar patterns. But looking at Oliver standing on his own feet, literally and figuratively, Harrison knew that no business success, no wealth, no power could compare to this. The simple joy of his son's smile, the knowledge that he was, finally, becoming the father he should have been all along, one step at a time, like Oliver with his walker, like Ellie, finding her way to a new life in a sanctuary built from the ruins of captivity, one step at a time toward healing. The Montgomery estate had always attracted attention. Architectural Digest had once featured it as the pinnacle of modern luxury. Business Insider had listed it among America's most extravagant private homes. But the headlines surrounding the property now were of a different nature entirely. Billionaire's redemption. Montgomery converts mansion to elephant sanctuary after abuse allegations. Real estate mogul transforms home into wildlife haven. Eleanor's haven. How a mother's love changed a dynasty. Harrison stood in his office, one of the few spaces in the mansion that remained relatively unchanged, reviewing the press coverage with Bradley. The story had broken nationwide after a neighbor had spotted construction crews demolishing parts of the famous Montgomery Gardens to make way for elephant habitats. "The stock has dropped 8 points, Bradley noted, gesturing to a financial chart on his tablet. "The board is nervous. They think you've lost your mind." "Perhaps I have," Harrison replied, surprisingly unbothered by the news. "Or perhaps I've finally found it. The investors in the Westlake development are threatening to pull out. They're concerned about your erratic behavior." Harrison picked up a framed photograph from his desk, a new edition, showing Oliver sitting beside Ellie, both basking in the sunlight that streamed through the habitat's open design. "Let them. The project can proceed without Montgomery investments, if necessary." Bradley stared at him, incredulous. "Harrison, This is your legacy we're talking about. Everything you've built. No, Harrison interrupted firmly. This, he tapped the photograph, is my legacy now. Oliver, the sanctuary, doing right by both. And what happens when the money runs out? Sanctuaries aren't profitable, Harrison. They're charitable endeavors. I'm well aware, Harrison said dryly. That's why I've established the Harrison Montgomery Foundation to fund it in perpetuity. I've transferred 30% of my personal assets to the endowment. Bradley nearly choked. 30%. That's about $6 billion. Yes. Harrison's tone was matter-of-fact. More than enough to ensure the sanctuary's future. Even if Montgomery Investments were to collapse tomorrow, which it won't. How can you be so sure? Harrison smiled. Thinly. Because despite what the board thinks, I haven't lost my business acumen. Just my willingness to prioritize it above all else. He handed Bradley a folder. This is the new 5-year strategy for the company. You'll notice it includes a significant pivot toward sustainable development and community-integrated projects. Bradley flipped through the detailed documents, his expression shifting from skepticism to reluctant admiration. This is actually brilliant, risky, but with significant upside if it works. It will work, Harrison said confidently. The market is moving this direction anyway. We're just getting ahead of it. A knock at the door interrupted them. Rog entered, looking more comfortable in the mansion than he had in the early days. Sorry to interrupt, but the news crews are here. They're setting up by the main habitat. Harrison nodded. Thank you. I'll be right there. As Rog left, he turned back to Bradley, coming to watch you tell the world that the notorious Harrison Montgomery has gone soft. I wouldn't miss it. Not soft, Harrison corrected. Just ... recalibrated. Outside, the transformation of the estate was nearly complete. Where manicured lawns and formal gardens had once dominated, natural habitats now flourished wetlands, grasslands, and shaded groves designed specifically for elephant well-being. A modest visitor center had replaced the opulent guest house. An educational signage lined the pathways. A small crowd had gathered: journalists, photographers, local officials, and a few curious neighbors. Dr. Chen stood near the habitat fence, explaining the facility's features to a reporter. Maria watched from a distance, her expression proud but reserved. And at the center of it all, waiting by a podium set up for the occasion, stood Oliver. No longer in a wheelchair, he had graduated to a cane, which he used more for security than necessity these days. At 8 years old, his recovery had been remarkable physically and emotionally. Ready? Harrison asked, joining his son. Oliver nodded, his eyes bright with excitement. I practiced my part all morning with Maria. You'll be perfect, Harrison assured him, straightening the boy's tie, a small concession to formality that Oliver had agreed to. For this special occasion, the press conference began with Harrison addressing the assembled media. He spoke briefly about the sanctuary's mission, its state-of-the-art facilities, and the conservation efforts it would support worldwide. He acknowledged the personal circumstances that had inspired the project without going into detail. The legal agreements with Child Protective Services prohibited public discussion of the specifics. Then, with evident pride, he introduced Oliver as the sanctuary's junior founder and elephant education specialist. Oliver stepped up to the microphone, looking momentarily nervous before finding his confidence. Eleanor's Haven is named after my mum, he began, his clear voice carrying across the attentive crowd. She loved elephants because they're smart and kind and take care of each other, just like she wanted our family to be. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the audience. Elephants in the wild are in danger because of poaching and because humans take their habitats. Here, we're going to give elephants a safe place to live and help people learn why they're so important. As Oliver continued his well-rehearsed speech, Harrison noticed a group of vehicles approaching the property. 3 specialized transport trucks, emblazoned with the logos of various wildlife conservation organizations, made their way slowly up the drive. Right on schedule, Oliver saw them, too, and hurried to finish his remarks. And today, We're welcoming 3 new elephants to join Ellie. They've all been rescued from circuses or zoos where they didn't have enough space. Now they'll have a forever home here at Eleanor's Haven. The timing was perfect, a coordinated effort between Harrison's team and the conservation groups. As cameras flashed and reporters called out questions, the transport vehicles parked, and teams of specialists began the careful process of unloading their precious cargo. Ellie, who had been watching from her habitat with evident interest, trumpeted loudly as the first new elephantan, aging female named Sita, rescued from a defunct circus, took her first tentative steps onto sanctuary grounds. "She's welcoming them," Oliver explained to the crowd, his expertise evident in his confident tone. "Elephants communicate with sounds humans can't always hear, but that trumpet means she's excited." The media ate it up. The knowledgeable child, the billionaire father transformed by crisis into a conservationist, the emotional elephant reunion. It was a perfect human interest story, combining redemption, animal welfare, and a child's remarkable resilience. What the cameras couldn't capture, what the news stories wouldn't fully convey, was the private journey that had led to this public moment. The therapy sessions where Harrison had confronted his own childhood trauma, the nights when Oliver still woke from nightmares, seeking reassurance that he wouldn't be punished again. The careful, daily rebuilding of trust between father and son. As the event concluded and the media began to disperse, Harrison stood with his arm around Oliver's shoulders, watching the new elephants explore their surroundings under the watchful eyes of Ellie and the care team. "We did it, Dad," Oliver said, leaning against his father's side. "Eleanor's Haven is real." "Yes," Harrison agreed, feeling a profound sense of peace, despite the business turmoil Bradley had outlined earlier. "Yes, it is." Some legacies were measured in dollar signs and market shares, but standing there with his son, watching elephants finding freedom after years of captivity, Harrison knew he had finally created something truly worth leaving behind. 6 months after the grand opening of Eleanor's Haven, winter had settled over the sanctuary. Snow blanketed the specially designed habitats, creating a peaceful landscape broken only by the heated pools that allowed the elephants to bathe comfortably even in cold weather. Inside the converted east wing of the mansion, Oliver sat cross-legged on the floor of what had once been a formal sitting room, now transformed into a classroom space for the sanctuary's educational programs. Around him, a dozen children from a local elementary school listened raptly as he explained elephant social structures. "They have families just like we do," Oliver was saying, pointing to a large diagram showing a typical elephant herd. "But their families are led by the oldest female, the matriarch. She remembers all the best places to find food and water, and she teaches the younger elephants everything they need to know." "Like a grandma," one little girl suggested, raising her hand excitedly. Oliver beamed. "Exactly like a grandma. A very smart, very strong grandma who protects everyone." From the back of the room, Harrison watched with quiet pride. The educational program had been Oliver's idea, inviting local schools to learn about elephants and conservation. At first, Harrison had worried it might be too much for his still recovering son, but Oliver had thrived in the role of junior educator, his natural enthusiasm for the subject overcoming his lingering shyness. Dr. Chen, who had helped develop the curriculum, stepped forward with a collection of objects. "These are some items that help us take care of the elephants here at the sanctuary," he explained, holding up each one for the children to see. "Who can tell me what this might be used for?" He held up a large brush with sturdy bristles. "For scrubbing them during baths," a boy guessed. "Close," Oliver answered. "It's actually for scratching. Elephants love to be scratched, especially in places they can't reach with their trunks. Their skin is very thick but also sensitive." Harrison smiled as the lesson continued. His son had absorbed an impressive amount of knowledge about elephant care in the months since the sanctuary opened. Oliver spent every possible moment with the care team, observing their work, asking questions, taking notes in the journal he now carried everywhere. The sanctuary had flourished beyond Harrison's expectations. What had begun as an act of atonement had evolved into something truly meaningful, world-class facility that now housed 7 rescued elephants, with plans to expand further in the spring. As the class concluded and the children filed out for their tour of the elephant barn, Oliver made his way to Harrison, leaning slightly on his cane. The doctors said he might eventually outgrow the need for it entirely, but for now it helped on days when his legs tired easily. "How did I do, Dad?" he asked, his face flushed with excitement. "Brilliantly," Harrison answered honestly. "Those kids were hanging on your every word," Oliver beamed. "Dr. Chen says I might be able to help with the new tour program when it starts in the spring, for the older visitors. If you feel ready for that, I think it's a wonderful idea." Harrison ruffled his son's hair affectionately. "But remember what Dr. Sobel said about balancing activities and rest." Dr. Sobel was Oliver's therapist, a kind woman who had helped them both navigate the aftermath of the trauma. Her gentle guidance had been instrumental in their healing process. "I know," Oliver agreed, "but talking about elephants doesn't make me tired. It makes me happy." Harrison nodded, understanding completely. They had each found their sources of healing. Oliver, in his passionate advocacy for the elephants. Harrison, in the careful rebuilding of his relationship with his son and the refocusing of his business empire toward more sustainable, ethical ventures. "Come on," Harrison said, checking his watch. "If we hurry, we can see the afternoon feeding before your math lesson with Mr. Garcia." They made their way through the connecting corridors to the elephant barn, a massive structure with soaring ceilings and spacious stalls for nights when the weather was too severe for the elephants to remain outside. Today, with the snow falling steadily, all 7 residents were enjoying the warmth of the barn. Ellie, now the unquestioned matriarch of the small herd, stood near the center of the communal space, using her trunk to arrange fresh hay into neat piles which she then shared with Sita, her closest companion among the new arrivals. The other elephants, 2 more females and 3 young males, moved about the space with the relaxed demeanor of creatures who felt secure in their environment. "Look," Oliver whispered, pointing to where the youngest elephant, a mischievous 4-year-old male named Zephyr, was attempting to steal an apple from an enrichment feeder designed to challenge the elephant's problem-solving skills. "He's figured out that if he pushes that log with his foot while reaching with his trunk, he can get the food out faster." "Clever boy," Harrison murmured, genuinely impressed by the elephant's ingenuity. Rog approached, clipboard in hand, his temporary consultancy having evolved into a permanent position as the sanctuary's research director. "He's too clever sometimes," he said with a laugh. "We have to keep redesigning the enrichment activities to stay ahead of him." "Any updates on the Thailand rescue?" Harrison asked, referring to a pair of logging elephants they hoped to bring to the sanctuary in the spring. "Paperwork is progressing," Rog confirmed. "The Thai authorities have given preliminary approval. If all goes well, they'll be here by April." Oliver's face lit up at this news. "Did you hear that, Dad? 2 more elephants? We'll need to prepare their welcome space in the East Habitat." "Already in the works," Harrison assured him. "The construction team starts next week, weather permitting." They spent the next hour observing the elephants' feeding time, with Oliver taking detailed notes in his journal about each animal's preferences and behaviors. His observations had already contributed to several adjustments in the care protocols, earning him the respect of even the most experienced staff members. As they were preparing to leave, Ellie approached the observation area where they stood. The bond between the elephant and Oliver had only strengthened over time. She extended her trunk through the protective barrier, and Oliver reached out to touch it gently. "Hello, beautiful," he said softly. "Are you taking good care of everyone?" Ellie rumbled in response, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the air between them. "She says yes," Oliver translated for his father, completely serious. "She says the new elephants are settling in well, but Zephyr needs extra attention because he's still young and sometimes gets frightened during storms." Harrison had long since stopped questioning these translations, whether they were the product of a child's imagination or some deeper connection he couldn't understand. The fact remained that Oliver often seemed to intuit the elephant's needs with uncanny accuracy. "Then we'll make sure Zephyr gets that extra attention," Harrison replied, equally serious. Perhaps some additional sound insulation in his stall before the spring thunderstorms arrive. Oliver nodded approvingly. That's a good idea. I'll mention it to Dr. Chen. As they finally turned to leave, Harrison felt Ellie's gaze following them, those ancient, intelligent eyes that seemed to hold wisdom beyond human understanding. He had developed his own relationship with the elephant over the months, a tentative, mutual respect that had gradually evolved into something like friendship. Without Oliver's prompting, he found himself turning back, meeting that steady gaze directly. "Thank you," he said quietly, knowing he would never be able to fully express his gratitude to this remarkable creature who had changed everything, for all of it. Ellie's trunk lifted in what could have been a gesture of acknowledgement. Then she turned away, moving back to her herd with the dignified grace that had captivated Oliver from the beginning. Father and son walked hand in hand, back toward the residential wing of the mansion, their breath forming small clouds in the winter air. The path ahead was clear of snow-heated pavers, another adaptation to ensure Oliver could move safely around the sanctuary, even in inclement weather. "Dad," Oliver asked as they walked, "do you think Mum would be proud of Eleanor's Haven?" Harrison's throat tightened with emotion. "Yes," he said softly. "I think she would be very proud of the sanctuary, and especially of you." Oliver smiled, his face turning toward the snow-laden sky. "Sometimes I think she can see us, and the elephants too." "I hope so," Harrison replied, squeezing his son's hand gently. "I really hope so." In the barn behind them, Ellie trumpeted a sound of contentment that echoed across the sanctuary, that bore Eleanor Montgomery's name and embodied her most cherished values: compassion, protection, family, values that, at long last, her husband and son were learning to live by too. 1 year to the day after what Oliver had come to call the night of the storm, the Montgomery estate, now officially Eleanor's Haven Elephant Sanctuary, hosted a private commemoration. No press, no visitors, no educational tours, just the people who had been part of the journey. Morning sunlight streamed through the new glass pavilion built where the cage room had once stood, deliberately transforming a space of confinement into one of openness and light. A small group gathered there, Harrison and Oliver, of course, Maria, now the sanctuary's hospitality director, Dr. Chen and Rog, who headed the veterinary and research programs respectively, Bradley, who had surprised everyone by becoming a passionate advocate for the sanctuary's mission, and a dozen staff members who had been with them from the beginning. "Thank you all for being here today," Harrison began, standing before the assembled group with Oliver at his side. "A year ago, I was a very different man. The Montgomery name stood for wealth, power, and success, but not compassion, not kindness, not the things that truly matter." He placed a hand on Oliver's shoulder, drawing strength from his son's presence. "What happened that night?" He paused, still finding it difficult to speak directly about his actions, "was the lowest point of my life. But it was also the beginning of transformation. For this property, for this family, for me." Oliver looked up at his father with a smile of encouragement. At 8, going on 9, he had grown taller and stronger over the past year. The physical therapist had recently declared him fully recovered, though he still kept his cane nearby as a security measure on particularly active days. "Eleanor's Haven exists because of many people," Harrison continued. "Dr. Chen, whose expertise and dedication have created a world-class facility. Rog, whose research is already advancing our understanding of elephant cognition and welfare. Maria, who protected Oliver when I failed to, and who continues to be the heart of this place." He nodded to each person as he acknowledged them, his gratitude evident. Bradley, who could have walked away from a friend who had lost his way, but chose instead to help build something new. And all of you, he gestured to the staff members, who believed in the vision of this sanctuary and work every day to make it a reality. Harrison took a deep breath before continuing. "But most of all, Eleanor's Haven exists because of 2 remarkable beings who taught me what true strength looks like." He turned to Oliver, "My son, who has shown me what resilience really means, who has forgiven what many would consider unforgivable, who reminds me every day of the best parts of his mother." Oliver's eyes shimmered with tears, but he stood tall, accepting his father's words with a maturity beyond his years. "And Ellie," Harrison finished, "who broke through walls, both literal and metaphorical, to save a child she had no obligation to protect, who demonstrated a depth of compassion I'm still learning to emulate." As if on cue, a familiar trumpeting sound came from outside. Through the pavilion's glass walls, they could see Ellie and the other elephants in their habitat, seemingly aware that something significant was happening. "Today," Harrison continued, "we're not just marking the anniversary of a rescue. We're celebrating what that rescue made possible. The Eleanor Montgomery Foundation has now funded 3 additional elephant sanctuaries worldwide. Our research program has partnered with the universities on 4 continents. And most importantly, 7 elephants who once lived in captivity now have a place where they can simply be elephants, forming their own family, making their own choices, healing from their own traumas." Oliver stepped forward then, his voice clear and confident as he addressed the group. "My mum used to tell my dad that elephants understand things humans sometimes forget, like how important family is, like how we should protect each other, like how being strong doesn't mean you can't be gentle too." He looked out at the elephants, a smile spreading across his face. "I think she was right, and I think she'd be happy that we're remembering those things now." After the brief ceremony, the group moved outside for a more festive gathering. Tables had been set up near the elephant habitat, laden with food prepared by Maria and her team. The elephants, curious about the unusual activity, gathered at the nearest fence line to observe. Harrison found himself standing slightly apart, watching as Oliver excitedly explained something about elephant behavior to Bradley, who listened with genuine interest. The boy moved with ease now, no longer hampered by physical weakness or fear. "He is flourishing," Maria said, joining Harrison with 2 glasses of lemonade. She handed one to him before following his gaze to Oliver. "Like a plant that finally receives proper sunlight and care." "Yes," Harrison agreed, accepting the drink gratefully, "though the credit for that belongs more to you than to me." Maria shook her head. "No, Mr. Montgomery. Children need their parents, even flawed ones, especially when those parents are trying to be better." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the celebration unfold. "I received a letter yesterday," Harrison said eventually, "from my father's care facility." Maria looked at him with concern. William Montgomery had suffered a severe stroke 6 months earlier, leaving him largely non-responsive. "He's gone," Harrison said simply, "passed in his sleep." "I am sorry for your loss," Maria offered, though her tone suggested she understood the complexity of his feelings. "Thank you, but I'm not sure it is a loss, exactly. The father I might have loved was lost long ago." Harrison sipped his lemonade, his expression thoughtful rather than grieved. "I've arranged for a simple service. Oliver and I will attend, and then it will be done." "The end of an era," Maria observed, "and the continuation of a better one, I hope." Oliver called to them then, waving excitedly from the fence where Ellie had approached, apparently interested in the celebration. Harrison and Maria joined him, watching as the elephant extended her trunk toward the boy in a familiar greeting. "She remembers what day it is," Oliver insisted, stroking the trunk gently. "Elephants never forget important things." "Is that so?" Harrison asked, sharing an amused glance with Maria. "It's scientifically documented," Rog confirmed, joining them at the fence. "Elephants have extraordinary long-term memory, especially for significant events and relationships." "Then I hope she remembers this too," Harrison said, reaching out hesitantly to touch Ellie's trunk alongside his son's hand. "The gratitude we feel, the commitment we've made to her and her kind." Ellie rumbled softly, a sound that seemed to contain acknowledgement, perhaps even forgiveness. As the afternoon progressed, visitors arrived, a small group of potential donors. Harrison had invited to see the sanctuary's work firsthand, while Oliver led them on a tour with Roger's assistance. Harrison found himself approached by a woman he recognized as the CEO of a major conservation organization. "Mr. Montgomery," She greeted him, extending her hand. Your sanctuary is impressive, far beyond what I expected. Thank you, Harrison replied, though I can claim little credit for the design or execution. I merely provided the resources. Don't underestimate the importance of that contribution, she said. But what interests me most is your personal transformation, from real estate developer to conservation advocate. It's an unusual journey. Harrison smiled faintly. It wasn't entirely voluntary, I assure you. The best journeys rarely are. She gestured toward Oliver, now animatedly explaining the sanctuary's research program to the other visitors. Your son is remarkable. Yes, Harrison agreed, his voice softening. He is his mother's child, and yours, she countered. I see you in him too, the determination, the focus, but directed toward something healing rather than merely profitable. The observation struck Harrison with unexpected force. He had spent so long seeing only Eleanor in Oliver, afraid to acknowledge the parts of himself that might have been passed down. But perhaps not all inherited traits were burdens. Perhaps some could be gifts, if channeled properly. As the day drew to a close and the visitors departed, Harrison and Oliver stood together at the observation deck, watching the elephants settle in for the evening. Ellie had established a nighttime routine of gathering the herd in a loose circle, their bodies positioned protectively around the youngest members. Family, Oliver said softly, leaning against his father's side. Just like us. Harrison put his arm around his son's shoulders, throat tight with emotion. Just like us, he agreed. Above them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Oliver had once been afraid of the night, afraid of storms, afraid of his father's unpredictable moods. Now he looked up at the heavens with wonder rather than fear. Do you think we'll still be here in 10 years, Dad? Running the sanctuary together? I hope so, Harrison replied honestly. Though by then, you'll probably be running it, and I'll be your assistant. Oliver giggled at the idea. You'd be a good assistant. But I think we're better as partners. Partners, Harrison repeated, liking the sound of it. I think you're right. As they turned to walk back to the mansion, their home, not just a showcase of wealth now, but a place of genuine warmth, Harrison glanced back one last time at the elephant habitat. Ellie stood watching them, her silhouette noble against the twilight sky. A year ago, she had broken through barriers of glass and steel to rescue a child in danger. In doing so, she had also rescued a man lost in the darkness of his own making. Harrison still didn't fully understand the depth of intelligence and compassion that had driven her actions that night. Perhaps he never would, but he understood enough to be grateful, enough to spend the rest of his life honoring her intervention, by being the father, the man, the human being he should have been all along. Good night, Ellie, he called softly. And thank you. In the gathering dusk, the elephant raised her trunk, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had all taken together, from cage to sanctuary, from cruelty to kindness, from broken to healing. Not a perfect ending, but a perfect beginning. If this story touched your heart, like and subscribe to our channel. Remember that healing and second chances can come from the most unexpected places. Share this with someone who might need to be reminded that it's never too late to change.